It is Wednesday night, East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around, gather around, gather around. Let's go. Let's talk some Michigan State football, Michigan State sports, mainly Michigan State football. Tough times, tough times, tough times, tough people, tough people. We got any tough people out there? Got any tough people in the locker room? Tough times for Michigan State, 3-3. The record's not all bad, but the way they've arrived at 3-3 is disconcerting and discouraging for some. And Michigan State fans voicing some displeasure last weekend during a 38-13 surprisingly non-competitive loss to a previously hapless UCLA team. UCLA had some talent. You saw that when they came to town. We mentioned that in the pre-snap read. They had four-star talent, especially in the skill positions, but not so much in the trenches. But Michigan State unable to make much, do much in the trenches themselves. Problems in a lot of places, and fans voicing some displeasure. And we'll get into some of those things and what that all means for Michigan State football. We're going to dive into the Michigan State SpartanMag mailbag. Got a lot of questions about the direction of the program, the coaching situation. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. Been publisher of Spartan Magazine since way back in the early 1990s. It's been a long time. It's been a fun time. Appreciate all the support from the maggers that are out there in the United States and all around North America, Newfoundland, and Halifax, Nova Scotia, and other places. The Maritimes. And North and South America, Hong Kong, Puerto Rico, Siberia. We had a subscriber in Siberia. It's a Michigan State guy that was over there doing some work. I don't know. That was a few years back. Anyway, appreciate all the Spartan Maggers. If you don't know what this nonsense is, become a Magger. You will like it. You'll become addicted. You'll be happy you did. $1, $1 American dollar. That's just a little bit more than 99 cents. $1 for a week. You can test drive SpartanMag.com. You can see what you think. We think you'll like it. Could have some really interesting times coming up in the coming weeks. Tomorrow is Thursday. That means Basketball Media Day, ladies and gentlemen. Basketball Media Day. Tom Izzo, is it 31st year for Mr. Izzo? He'll be up there at the podium doing the usual Tom Izzo routine. That'll be fun. We'll have coverage at SpartanMag.com. Be at practice. Might have some video clips of practice right here on this YouTube channel. Give us a like here on the channel. Subscribe to the channel, and you'll be able to get alerts anytime that we've got any of this nonsense going on. And we know that some of you are into it. We appreciate that. What do we have here? We've got, so go to SpartanMag.com, $1. You can check that out. In the meantime, before we get into everything, let's talk about Roback. Roback. Great sponsor here at On3, SpartanMag.com, the SpartanMag.com VCast, and SpartanMag Live. Roback Activewear, the lovely line of activewear coming in from Roback, and it is great material. It's great. It's great stuff. Check it out. They've got this MSU line, and we've got a promotional code for you here in a few seconds. Roback, R-H-O-B-A-C-K. You see it spelled right up there, R-H-O-B-A-C-K. And there's only one way to describe Roback: best fit, best feel. And for those of you that are not familiar with Roback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Roback has released some great new licensed items within the Roback Game Day collection. There are new novel polo designs and clean hoodie and Q-zip designs for some of your favorite teams, including Michigan State. It's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else in the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. It is quality stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Not just hoodies and quarter zips. Check out the everyday shorts and Delta Performance pants. Super comfortable, elastic waistband, great fabric. Roback, it's the best. Here's your promotional code. Promotional code MSU20. MSU20. That's it. MSU20. That's it. Or MSU20. Same thing, right? That's at roback.com. That's RHOBACK.com. Roback.com for 20% off for all new customers. That's spelled RHOBACK.com. 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with code MSU20. Roback, we appreciate their help, their support. That is good stuff. Check it out. Check out that Michigan State stuff. You will like it. All right, here we go. Big game, 3-3, heading down to Bloomington this weekend. It's going to be rough. Indiana, the best team they've ever had. Michigan State in some tough predicaments right now. We'll go question number one. And also, hey, we want to let people know, first time we've been live in a long time. We've got a lot of people making comments. We won't be able to get to all of them, so what we want to do now, and it does help the operation here at SpartanMag.com. I don't know if the mechanism still exists, but we used to have the ability for the super chat where you put a little tip in the tip jar, and it'll make it a little insignia, and then I can see it. Also helps the program, helps Spartan Mag, helps our mom and pop small business headquartered here, the world headquarters here in East Lansing, Michigan, lovely East Lansing, Michigan. So if you want a comment or a question for me to field it and talk about it here, we'll need you to do it with the super chat. So I'm pretty sure that still is available. If so, we may see one here in a moment if we're so lucky. I've not been able to. I'm pretty sure that's activated. If so, we'll keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, we've got questions that were posted over at the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. Great to be with you live again. I don't think Big Movie's going to make it. We thought last week he would. I sent a message to him. He thought it'd be better tomorrow, but we got to get these things out at least midweek. Later in the week, it's not as good. Big Movie's not ducking us. He just doesn't always have time. We might hear from Nils. Not sure, but we'd love to hear from you guys. So I'm going to put the phone number up, and we're going to open the lines throughout the show. Let's see if we can find it here. Where are we? I thought I posted it. I'll go ahead and do it right now. Call the show, 616-439-1158. And those lines will remain open. There, now that should be on the front. There we go. So let's go with question number 1 from Ryan in Royal Oak, Michigan. He says, hey, Comp, do you think, in your honest opinion, Coach Jonathan Smith was given a fair shake given NIL administrative support and time? Can you elaborate on your thoughts? I don't know if I can elaborate a lot, but and a fair shake NIL, not initially. And then their first recruiting class, they really weren't sure where they stood, what kind of backing they had, and they were really in the dark on some things, and they did the best they could for a while there. This year, they're pretty reasonably well funded this year, but just out of the gates, there were some unknowns, and communication was not great, and they were operating in the dark a little bit, and it was hard for them to go gung-ho in a lot of ways, and that's why they lost a lot of players in that first year. You remember Simeon Barrow, Zion Young, Derek Harmon, Gino Vandemark, offensive lineman. The other offensive lineman, I forget, he used to text on the show here, the kid from Illinois, transferred to Illinois, now he's at somewhere else, but he's starting somewhere else, might be a mid-major. Blackstock is starting at Arkansas now? I mean, one of the main things in the NIL era, the portal era, is to hang on to your talent. In that first year, Michigan State was unable to do that, and that was a reason why. So that got them off to that they could have used some of those linemen last year against Michigan and in some other games. And if you get to 6-6 and you get to a bowl game in year 1, that changes the tenor heading into year 2. So NIL right away, fair shake, no. Administrative support, that gets back to the NIL situation. When Alan Haller was athletic director, the communication was just kind of spotty. The NIL strategy was a little spotty. The third party support was a little spotty. There were some that were solid, but they weren't embraced. There were some that were embraced, but they were not solid. And Alan Haller was always trying to make sure to stay within the NCAA rules, which at the time, those were a little bit cloudy. This is before the House settlement. So the administrative support was spotty, and we'll wait and see how this all ends up being written in the end. But, I just go back to, one of the coaching axioms out there is tread lightly and be careful about accepting a head football coaching job when there is no president in place. And Michigan State had no university president in place when Jonathan Smith was hired. So at the time, Jonathan Smith had a lot of success. He'd done a lot of great things at Oregon State. Not easy to win there. The Pac-12 disintegrated, blew up. And most of those schools in the Pac-12 found life rafts. Oregon State did not. They were sinking. So an Oregon State guy, one of their favorite sons, but he was a hot coaching commodity. And Michigan State seemed to suit his personality, he thought, and his family thought, his wife thought, frankly. And they thought they could do some things here. They still do. So, he did a little bit of a Hail Mary there, signing in with Michigan State and Alan Haller despite no president. Then you hire Guskowitz. He brings in his own athletic director. And it's awkward. It just is, especially if the team's not winning. And we'll get to more about what's going on with the team, and that just kind of exacerbates the situation. So do I think you got a fair shake? Fair shake, fair. What's a fair? Fair is a place where they give a blue ribbon.
Justin Spiro.
Special guest
To
today.
accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right, let's go out to Metro Detroit. Let me finish my segment, my sentence. As Rick Neuheisel likes to say, fair is where they give a blue ribbon to a pig. So fair doesn't always come into equation in terms of calling balls and strikes on how things are going. Let's go to Justin Spiro, a colleague of ours, an ardent Michigan State supporter. He wears his heart on his sleeve, and everybody knows where he stands. A lot of you out there are familiar with his work and his interviews, and he's calling in right now. It's good to hear from Justin. Justin, thanks for calling in. What's going on, man?
Jim Comparoni, a legend that you are. What a privilege as always to speak to you, certainly with the audience you have. I appreciate it. I'm just curious, I joined late. Do you think it's safe to say that the 2023 coaching search was botched at this point, not simply in the outcome that it landed on and the candidate that was chosen, but in the process, to the point where even if I could argue that there's a world where Smith would have worked, the process that Alan Haller took, the path that he rode to get there, was so inherently alienating of so many, I would argue, close to darn near everybody up there, that you needed to support this to make this work in the first place. If not the candidate they landed on, at least can we admit now, Jim, that the process was a failure, that Alan Haller, who is a wonderful man and is a great Spartan football alum and, a good dude for a long time up there, that's granted. But can we now say that his legacy, which he admitted at the time in 2023 openly, would be tied not to the hockey coach he hired or the volleyball coach or the women's soccer coach, but the football coach, and that his legacy in his own terms, by his own standard, is a failure because this was a failure?
The results do not look favorable so far, to put it lightly. The process in general, I've got to say that I know that you were critical of it at the time. I was not critical of the hire of Jonathan Smith. I know that you were very skeptical, and you may turn out to be right. I thought it was a really strong hire at the time. Jonathan Smith did not have Michigan State ties, did not have State of Michigan ties, did not have Midwestern ties. Everybody knew that would be a hurdle, but that's not what's holding him back at this point. But I've got to say, I thought it was a good hire at the time. I can't backtrack on that. So I thought at the time the process was not. The end result is it could be botched. Like they say in engineering classes, you build bridge fall down, no partial credit. You hire coach fall down, no partial credit. So in retrospect, the search, as you would say, and I think you said at the time, was botched, and you may end up being correct. At the time, I was not critical of it. I thought Michigan State had a nice, solid A hire based on what was out there for the reasons I mentioned a moment ago. Because of what was available to them, because the Pac-12 had disintegrated, I thought that Michigan State benefited from timing of that to get a candidate like Jonathan Smith with his resume, because it was impressive. In the meantime, the bedside manner and the intensity, all those things, we'll get to that in a moment, and the lack of football progress, that is not looked good lately, and that's the chief problem right here. But I can't say in retrospect that I thought it was botched. In terms of Alan Haller, one of the things I think you insinuated is the way he lack of communication, I think, is what you insinuated, right, with donors or whatever. Is that what you meant by that? Justin, are you there?
Do you not think that an AD's most important job and maybe you disagree, but in my estimation, do you not think it is fostering those relationships with donors, especially in the NIL era? These donors, I know big donors up there that I have relationships with, they said that they don't want Bat to even call them until Smith is gone. So, I mean, by that, it's the most important job of the AD is fostering those relationships. And now that's not Bat's fault.
Breaking up a little bit, Justin. We're going to stay with you. I want to stay with you because I think you're making some important points, but you were breaking up a little bit. Go ahead, repeat that.
Okay, hold on. Let me switch you off here. Can you hear me a little better now?
Yes, that's much better. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I took you off the Bluetooth because I'm driving, but I'm just pulling in. So, if my argument is that an AD's job, the most important component of their job, is fundraising, certainly in the NIL era, I would argue even prior to that, how can I not say that Alan Haller was a total failure if the relationships are so bad with donors now, where I'm talking to multiple major donors who are telling Michigan State and J-Bet directly not to even call them and ask for anything. I heard of this is a secondhand, but a third donor who lives in Los Angeles and was turning down free tickets and sideline passes to the USC game 12 minutes from his office. It's like the old joke when the Lions were bad, if they were playing in my backyard, I'd close the blinds. This is a former major Michigan State donor, was offered free tickets and sideline passes to a game down the street from where he lives. And he said, no, thank you, and call me when Smith is gone. This is so, I'm sorry, if that is the state of affairs with the donors that are going to have to fund whatever this is going to be eventually, then Alan Haller failed. I mean, that, and thank you for the coach and night hire in hockey. I care about that. I'm a big Michigan State and big college hockey fan, but I'm also realistic enough to know that 99.9% of people don't care about that, and that's not going to move the needle because it's a non-revenue sport. I don't care how anyone tries to spin it. So Alan Haller failed, and it's important that we acknowledge that he failed. I'm not even going to get into the fact that Urban Meyer was in East Lansing and that Alan Haller didn't want him and was whining on press row about it and up in the box to multiple reporters. I think it was in Minnesota. I got to have to look at the schedule. I can't remember. It was on the road last year. Maybe it was Rutgers. Or 2 years ago. I can't remember. But the guy botched any pursuit of Urban Meyer, which a coaching dalliance, I would say. It's kind of like it wasn't an interview as much as us wooing him. It was his job if he wanted it on any planet that made sense with an AD with any killer instinct. Mark Hollis would have gotten that done. I would argue Jay Batt in 2023 would have gotten that done. This is on Alan Haller. He said openly he wanted to be held to the standard that this coaching hire, if it goes right, he's going to get the credit, and if it goes poorly, he's going to get the blame. Well, congratulations, Alan. You blew it. I think it's safe to say there is no turning back from this. He has lost. Well, he never had the support of Jay Batt. Jay Batt inherited this, but Batt does not like him and does not support him. Tom Izzo, I'm not talking about as a person, by the way. I'm talking as a head coach. Everyone thinks Smith's a great guy. Tom Izzo is out, doesn't like him as the head coach, doesn't think he's the right guy. The donors are telling the AD, don't even call me until he's gone. So now I've got the AD, Tom Izzo, and the donors completely out on the head coach. And now, guess what? Even the fans have turned against him. And even Stephen Brooks, who's one of the more measured guys in media, is writing articles saying there's no way back. So now we lost the fans, the media, the AD, Tom Izzo, and the donors. You tell me, how is there any path out of this? It's over. It's over, Jim. I'm so bummed about it, but that's the reality.
Well, you mentioned the donor in California that would not accept tickets until Jonathan Smith was fired for the USC game. Is that right?
Well, yeah. Yes, that's correct.
Well, Michigan State was 3-0 at that time. What did he want at that time?
Yeah. He was out on Smith after the Michigan game last year.
Well, 3-0, I mean, that's kind of early. He was probably out on Tom Izzo after 1 year also, wasn't he? I don't know who the donor is, but, Joe Paterno used to have a saying for donors, I want your dollars, but I don't want your cents. And I don't know who that donor is, and you probably know him personally, and you don't want to offend him, but my personal opinion is, you want the money from donors like that, but you don't want their input, because that's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying?
And you know what? We can have whatever opinion we want on the merits of the position, but those are the positions, and it's not their job to be right or wrong. It's their job to get that money forked over, and if it's not getting forked over, this isn't going to work. And that's just the bottom line. I'm not the only one that has reported on bigger donors than this, although this one's pretty high up there. Graham Couch openly reported that Matt Ishbia wanted Urban Meyer. I mean, and was cut out of that whole process. So I mean, I'm not even the only one that has said that. The donor, we can argue about the merits of whether they have a legitimate gripe or not. I don't really care whether they have merit or not. The point is they're not spending the money. So whether there's merit behind it or not is not really relevant.
Right. As far as the donors go and what Alan Haller was trying to do, and he was in a tough situation because he does need the donors, and ads have to be really great with the donors. And Alan is a fine gentleman. I like him a lot. Good football player. Was a credit to the police department at DPS and campus and so forth. Did a great job with Hollis and Izzo when they hired D'Antonio. Did a great job in some other things. What he was trying to do during that coaching search, he was trying to avoid leaks at all costs, and he didn't trust that he could share information with donors without it leaking out who he was going after. Now, it turned out, we at SpartanMag we were on the trail throughout that Jonathan Smith was interested, and others reported it also as it went along. So, leak or not, that got out. But that's my understanding, that he was trying to keep it very, very close, tight to the vest, and to prevent leaks. So donors didn't hear anything. Other key members of the athletic department didn't hear anything, and that ruffled some feathers. You're right.
Yeah, and I respected what he was trying to do there. I just think, from what I've been told, donors weren't even told why he wasn't talking to them. It was just radio silence. There's an argument, like one of them told me, this was back during the search at the end, right when they hired Smith, right after the press conference. It was like the day after the press conference to announce him. One of these donors told me, I was fine with him not telling me what was going on, but I would have appreciated a call to explain why he's not telling me what's going on.
You're right.
At least that. Now that's an anecdote. That's one
fair.
guy.
No, that's fair.
But
that does sound
he didn't even care about him.
No, that is fair, and that does sound like Alan Haller to a fault. He's a very principled person and tried to do the right thing and tried to make everyone happy. But you're right. Communication. I'm not surprised that it would have been lacking in that category there. You're right.
And he is a good man, and I don't have disdain for Alan personally. He's a good man and a good Spartanite. He botched the most important decision in the process. But I'm going to hang up and listen, Jim. You're doing a great job as always. I'm loving your work, and keep it up, man. You're doing a great job.
Thanks a lot, Justin. Thanks for calling in. Anytime, man. Thank you.
You bet. Have a great night.
All right, you too. All right, we got Kenneth Roberts. Got a super chat from Kenneth Roberts. We certainly appreciate that. So the super chat is working with a little tip jar right there. It does help the program, helps the process. With a super chat, we will read your question or your statement. Kenneth Roberts, we'd also like to hear where you're posting from, if you don't mind. Kenneth Roberts with a super chat with the, what do we have here? Let's see if we can find it. There it is. Oh. There's the taped it for the live studio audience. $2. We appreciate that. And the tip jar from Kenneth Roberts. $2 from Kenneth Roberts says, next head coach, ? I should have asked Justin that. Justin Spiro, you're watching right now. You go ahead and chime in. Who's your choice for the next head coach at Michigan State if there is a vacancy? Kenneth, that's a great question. And we've got questions here in the mailbag that pertain to that. And I know I advertised the super chat and welcomed it, but next head coach, I've got to say, I'm not going to be answering that right now. We will have a hot board if it comes to that, but I'm just not comfortable talking about something like that while Jonathan Smith and these guys are over there in the football building, working to try to find a way to pull an upset at Indiana. And most importantly, I'm not going to do that while they've got family members at home. And I know they're well compensated, but some of the assistant coaches, they're making good money, but maybe not life-changing money right now. And they've got children, they've got kids that are going to school tomorrow. And they're going to hear it from classmates. And they do hear it. And I'm not going to contribute to that. There's not going to be anything out there in the internet that bullies at school tomorrow are going to be able to take to the children of some of these coaching assistant coaches at Michigan State, and they're not going to say, Jim Comparoni said this. No, not with my name attached to it. So hope you respect that. I'm not going there until we get there. But so right now, Michigan State's working to try to fight off the ropes one more time like they did in the second and third quarter against USC and like they did in the second and third quarter against Nebraska. And we'll see what happens after that. So anyway, give us a call. We've got the numbers still up there. I think we're going to go ahead and do that. I'll type it in again. Call the show, 616-439, what is it, 439-1158. I think someone said whether that's a Spiro burner account. No, that was the real Justin right there. All right, question number 2. So getting back to Ryan's question from Royal Oak, do I think Jonathan Smith was given a fair shake at NIL administrative support? I went through those two, and time. No, I mean, if it comes to an end soon, 1.5 years, except for the fact that it's really teetered in the wrong direction. Should you get time to rewrite the ship? You know, I've looked into some other coaches that had extra time. I mean, you look at Virginia right now, and their coach, Elliott, was it 3-4 years, had the extra year, partly because at Virginia they've got pressure, but not like some of these other places. I didn't watch Virginia closely enough to ascertain whether they were having fumbles and foibles like Michigan State's been having this year. And another one that was very interesting was, I've mentioned this before on the VCast, talking about Tony Elliott at Virginia. Previously, he was offensive coordinator at Clemson during their glory seasons. Goes to Virginia, he's 3-7, 3-9 in year number 2. 5-7 last year. Now he's 5-1 with upset over Florida State. They're in the top 20. So they stuck with him for 3 years. Now in year 4 turns the corner. And they're looking pretty smart for that. And he's going to be, Tony Elliott at Virginia is going to be someone who jumps to one of these other programs. And you kind of hope that doesn't happen. Virginia's stuck with him, and now he turns the corner. Braum at Purdue. I mentioned him in the VCast last week. And I've been trying to reach out to Tom Dienhart, who covers Purdue for Gold and Black. And Dienhart, the great writer, great reporter, great college football reporter. I've not heard back from him yet, but Dienhart, just as an aside, working over there for the Purdue site, he used to work for the Sporting News back in the mid to late 1990s. And back then, I mean, the Sporting News I thought was great. It was great. You know, their axiom was see a different game. They were X's and O's oriented with some of the stuff that they wrote. Some of you guys that are old enough might remember when the Sporting News was great. And Dienhart was their college football anchor, and he was great. And I'd read his stuff every week, and he's tremendous. It's been nice over the years to get to know him better, really respect his opinion. He covers Purdue now. And I was going to ask him about Braum and how Purdue stuck with Braum. Year number 1 in 2017, Braum went 7-6. Year 2, 6-7. Year 3, 4-8. 7-6, 6-7, 4-8. Purdue stuck with him. COVID year, 2-4. Purdue stuck with him. Year 5, 2021, they went 9-4. You might remember Michigan State in 2021 went, 10-2. They lost to Purdue. And I remember that year Purdue put up like 350 yards passing against Iowa. And a lot of times something happens on a Saturday, we're working to cover stuff on Saturday and into Sunday. And hopefully if I'm doing my job right, I'm staying up all night, and I end up sleeping a little bit too late on Sunday. And I woke up Sunday, and the first thing I did was watch the Purdue-Iowa game on Sunday. Everybody else is watching NFL. I'm watching Purdue-Iowa. I'm like, how in the heck, it's the strongest language I'm going to use tonight, hopefully. How in the heck did Purdue throw for 350 plus against Iowa? I turned that thing on and watched it. And who was that former walk-on quarterback that they had? Ended up being an NFL draft pick. I watched that, and I think it came to the bunker, and I said, this guy for Purdue, who I'd never really paid much attention to before. And he's in the NFL now. I forgot his name. But I'm like, this guy looks like an NFL quarterback to me. Making reads, strong arm, zip, accuracy, all that stuff. I'm like, what kind of recruit was he? Not a recruit. He was a walk-on. I'm like, I don't care. It looks like an NFL player to me. They played Michigan State. I'm like, this is going to be a problem. And what Brom did then with just kind of triangle concepts here and there, getting openings. And I warned readers that Purdue was going to be a handful, and Purdue did beat Michigan State. Michigan State's weakness was their pass defense, and Purdue took advantage of that, beat Michigan State, went to the Music City Bowl, beat Tennessee at Purdue. Or was that the following year, 2022? Maybe that was 2022 when they did all that. They beat Tennessee in the Citrus Bowl. No. They went 8-4. Then he took the Louisville job, and then they brought in Drew Brees and those guys the following year. Anyway, point is, Purdue stuck with Brom. 7-6, 6-7, 4-8 in year 3. Then 2-4. They stuck with him for 4 years. The difference is Purdue doesn't have the high expectations. They've gone through so many coaches. They just wanted to stay the course. What did they see that made them think they could stay the course? I don't know. I'm trying to look into that a little bit more to find out how the temperature was. But at Michigan State, a year and a half, and the crowd turns on Jonathan Smith in a very ugly way. Somewhat understandable in some ways, but Michigan State does not have the patience that Purdue had, does not have the patience that Virginia had. But to their credit, Purdue, it paid off for them later, but they lost the coach anyway. It's paying off for Virginia, but they lost the coach anyway. Michigan State's not showing the type of progress I suspect that Purdue must have shown, that Virginia must have shown. These are apples to apples. Michigan State's really not, to this point, showing that kind of progress, and that's why he may not get as much time as they got. Sometimes when you're a middle to middling to lightweight program, you've got nothing to lose but to stick with somebody. What's it going to hurt Purdue to stick with Brom? What's it going to hurt Virginia to stick with Elliott? They're not football programs anyway. Stick with them. What's it going to hurt? Indiana, a couple of years ago, had a coaching vacancy. They didn't have a long line of people wanting that job. Signetti wants it. Let's interview him. He's got a plan. He's got a lot of energy. We're Indiana. We haven't been good in 100 years. What's it going to hurt? Let's hire him. He's 62 at the time. When I was doing the hot boards back then, I was looking at every coach in the country. I looked at Signetti. I saw his age. I'm like, I don't think so. Mistake on my part. I'm sure Michigan State thought the same. If Michigan State had hired him, there would have been a lot of backlash. There was backlash in Indiana from the fans. No backlash now. Point is, Indiana didn't have a long line of people wanting that job. There was a decent line. It's a Big Ten job and so forth. Not as long as Michigan State's. I mean, Michigan State had Jonathan Smith, Matt Campbell interested, off the record. Elko was interested till the A&M thing happened with Fisher. But then, A&M went after Stoops at Kentucky. And there was kind of like a online insurrection, and that one was snuffed out. Then their number 2 pick, Elko, goes in there. He's doing great. Kind of like Michigan State in 1995. Number 2 pick was Nick Saban. Number 1 pick was Frank Ganter. He turned it down. Got stuck with Saban. Did a pretty good job in year 5. Saban was Alabama's 2nd pick too, right? Didn't they want Rich Rodriguez first? Did Rodriguez take that job for a few days? Was he the one? Anyway, I can't remember my overriding point on all that. But let's go to question number 2. MSU Polo in Rockford, Michigan says, hey, Jim, pretty simple. What, in your opinion, are the most important traits to be considered for hiring the next football coach at Michigan State? And do you have a short list of candidates that fit that criteria? I'm not going to have a short list right now. In the future, maybe, but for the reasons I mentioned a moment ago, not going to do that. Most important traits to be considered hiring a next football coach? I think head coaching experience, which Jonathan Smith had. A recruiting plan for this area, which Jonathan Smith had when he came here. He didn't recruit here before, but had a plan, and he listened to people like Mark D'Antonio and others, the importance of Ohio, the importance of in-state recruiting, and they put in some effort there. You can argue whether they really hit it hard enough. Not sure. Did they not hit it hard enough because they weren't sure about the NIL backing? That's possible. But head coaching experience, I think, if there is a change, there's a lot of things that need to be done over there in a lot of ways, and I think it's going to require someone with head coaching experience, just personal opinion right now. But I don't want to get into that stuff just yet, all those other things. Question 3, Dr. Fraser Crane in Seattle, and he is listening. Before we get to his question, let's talk about MGM. 1-800. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER and turn this down for about a minute or so. And I'm serious about that. I take that stuff seriously. But this is an On3 sponsorship, and we appreciate the support from BetMGM.com. If you haven't signed up for a BetMGM yet, if you have not signed up at BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works. Download the BetMGM app. Sign up using bonus code ON3. That's O-N and the number 3, ON3. And deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game. You will receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code ON3 when you sign up. Disclaimer, see betmgm.com for terms, 21 and over only. So make this college football season one for the history books. Make it legendary. Go with betmgm.com if you are into gaming and no gambling problem. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Or in New York, call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY. In Arizona, 1-800-NEXT-STEP. In Massachusetts, 1-800-327-5050. In Iowa, 1-800-BETS-OFF. In Puerto Rico, 1-800-981-0023. First bet offer is for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that will expire in 7 days. This is in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Do not forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code ON3 and get your $1,500 first bet offer today. So thank you to the BetMGM people. Let's check over here, see if we've got anything else in the tip jar. And we appreciate Mr. Roberts doing that. Firstly, let's go back to the mailbag. Dr. Fraser Crane says, Comp, I know you are not as reactionary as some of us, but after Saturday, there's been a definite shift in the way most people feel about Jonathan Smith and the program. He says, if Smith gets let go, can you speak to why it did not work out for him? Was it just a bad fit? Was he overwhelmed or uncomfortable as Michigan State coach? Perhaps you could take us back to Haller's decision on extending the offer to Smith. Were there no other candidates considered? And why was the buyout so significant? Good question. Buyout so significant? I mean, when you're hiring away an existing successful coach at a Power 4 program, and I realized that Oregon State was dropping out of the Power 4, but Jonathan Smith knew that there was some risk in leaving Oregon State to take this job. So if you're going to get him to come from a place like that, the buyout is going to be significant, like you said. And it was par for the course with a lot of other coaches similar around the country. You look at what Luke Fickell has with his buyout coming in from Cincinnati. And leaving Cincinnati to go to Wisconsin would seem like more of a no-brainer than this one. So buyouts are just part of the industry at that juncture. Whether or not those type of buyouts will continue to be part of the exercise of luring existing coaches from Power 4 programs remains to be seen. You ask, if Smith gets let go, can you speak about why it did not work out for him? Why it hasn't worked out to this point on the field football things. Offensive line has not come around like it needed to. This is a program based on an offense, based on a running offense with outside zone, inside zone. And they've not been able to establish that with a quality running game. Is it too much to ask for that in a year and a half, in year two? Maybe it is. Did they get that established at Oregon State in year two? Probably not. Would they have gotten it done in time? Maybe so. I heard a story last night about a running back that went to USC that might have ended up at Michigan State if the NIL situation had been straightened out for just the right amount of money at the 11th hour. Didn't get him. Would that have helped? I heard the parent of that running back told some Michigan State people, man, we could help Michigan State. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn on that to that person who told me that story, but it's a telling story. Running back, Mekhi Frazier, Brandon Tullis, a couple of guys on the job training, redshirt freshmen or true sophomores. Mekhi Frazier, kind of a project. That fourth down carry he had against, was it USC or Nebraska? Either way, it was impressive. He put his head down, blocking failed. And because a tight end and a wide receiver blocked the same guy and they left somebody unblocked, Mekhi Frazier puts his head down, knocks that guy out to pick up the first down in a key moment in the game. Nice toughness from Frazier. He's tough. No questioning his heart, determination, and so forth. But he's kind of I would say he's like a redshirt freshman backup to a better running back that could become good later, but he's not a backup to anybody because he's the guy. Blocking has not been great. You lose Luka Vincic, who I thought would be, when he came into Michigan State, when he committed, and I looked at his Oregon State film from last year, I said here on the podcast, I said his film is better than Brocious or Big Dooley Phillips. And nothing against Brocious and Big Dooley Phillips. They both started games last year and became injured. They had the injury situation, but what they put on film was kind of okay, and it was kind of promising. But Vincic was better walking in the door as a guard than either of those two. And I thought better than Caleb Carter, too, what he did at Western Carolina. Vincic was hurt during preseason camp, ends up getting into a starting role, I think, in week 2, and then he's lost for the season. Tough blow for him. By the way, I saw him. These guys are still, I know that a lot of these players make money and they're pseudo-professionals and things like that, but I saw him, I was driving to campus on Tuesday for a press conference at about 11:30 or so, and I saw Vincic coming out of a building, coming out of class, with a big knee brace on, in crutches. He'd gone to class. Yeah, some of these guys are professionals to an extent, but some of them are students too. They're all students. They're all trying to be students. And I really think Jonathan Smith is serious about the academic part of being a college football player. He's a former walk-on. He's serious about it. He doesn't want to just use their athletic ability for football and then cast them aside. He wants these guys to go to class, get a meaningful degree, and move on, which is the same way Mark D'Antonio approached it. Vincic, by the way, I don't think I'm talking out of school either. And I met Vincic's dad last week. He was in town and he was around, and he happened to see me during interviews and talked to him for a moment. This is before the UCLA game. And, he was recruited to Oregon State by Jonathan Smith and the staff. And this Vincic's dad, I don't think he'd mind me saying, he was like, man, I'm telling you, Jonathan Smith is good. And, there's just all this public angst and everything. And he says, I know what he can do. They need to stay with him. Now, he's biased because his son came across the country to go to Michigan State. He doesn't want to see any upheaval. I'm just relaying to you what he said. And some of what he told me was off the record. I don't think that was. Just the fact that he supports Jonathan Smith. That's Luka Vincic. But anyway, offensive line has not progressed. It would have been nice to have Vincic all year. It would have been nice. Stanton Ramil was expected to have a breakthrough season this year. Struggled a little bit earlier in the year, and then now he's lost for a month or so. That has not helped on the left side. The offensive tackle situation has been shaky. And it was a little shaky when he was around, but you have to bet on the rise that someone as talented as Stanton Ramil would gain traction and become a solid left tackle, and Connor Moore would be solid at right tackle. But those things have upset the apple cart. Now Christian Phillips, who had some good moments in the last 2 games at times. And then there was the drive against I get the USC game and the Nebraska game mixed up. But there was one drive against USC when I thought Gavin Brocious played his best series as a Spartan. That was encouraging to see. But Phillips at times, I thought, was starting to really play some nice football. Sustains a lower body injury against UCLA. Whether or not he plays this weekend, based on Michigan State's lack of luck, I wouldn't be surprised if he's out. So offensive line has not come around, but you're talking about basically 2 starters and what I think would be your best backup guard at this point. You take that out, you better have some depth, you better have some experience there, and they don't really have that. So that hurt the offensive line, which hurt the running game, it's hurt the pass protection, all those things. If they had all been healthy, what would the offensive line look like? I'm not sure, but it could have made a difference. You're asking me, why did it not work out for him? It starts with blocking, like it always does, every game. Every offense, it's about trenches. Defense, trenches first. Defense has been a disappointment big time. Joe Rossi spoke with media today. I was over there talking to him with other press members. And one of the things I mentioned to him is something that I talked to Mark D'Antonio about a few weeks ago. I saw Mark D'Antonio at Michigan State basketball practice. We were just talking about college football in general. And the nature of college football and defenses and technique not as sharp across the country. Not for the best. I mean, Ohio State is still great at defense, even better now. Matt Patricia doing a great job with their defense. Indiana's pretty good on defense. A&M with Elko, pretty good on defense. But by and large, defense is a tricky puzzle across the country and at Michigan State. And I mentioned this dynamic to Rossi, who had a really good defense at Minnesota in 2022. Then in his last year at Minnesota in 2023, the defense took a step back because they lacked a little experience. Last year, the defense did a good job tackling. This year, the tackling has suffered a little bit. But the disappointing thing, in my opinion, is the miscommunications in pass defense. And we saw 2 terrible busts out of the running back twice, letting him go. I think one time Amorian Smith should have had him. One time Wayne Matthews should have had him. Gap integrity was good in the opening drive, really good. And when they were good, they were firm. But as the game went along, they had a 3rd down situation in the second drive, and they turned the tight end loose. Nobody covered him. Drive, field goal. And then Michigan State gets the ball back, gets stopped on 4th down, direct snap, touchdown. 10-7, and the game changed right there. But the defense, so Jonathan Smith said for the second time this year, and he mentioned it on Monday, do we have too much stuff in on defense? Do we have too much volume? In other words, are we slowing our own players down because they have too many checks to do? When I was talking to D'Antonio about that, he said, hey, man, when we had our defense, our base defense, and he wasn't like critical of Michigan State. He's just talking about Michigan State in general or college football in general. He said, in the back 7, we had, did he say 7? Did he say 7 checks or checks all the way to G? He was like check A, check B, check C, D, E, F, all the way to G. That many checks based on formation, what side, is it short side field, long side of the field? Is there a motion? Is there a trade? Is there someone in the backfield, 2 in the backfield? Check, 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 all the way to 7. This is what I do A. This is what I do B. This is what I do C. It may not have very often got past C, but this is D all the way to G. And you can't do that with 8 new players. And I mentioned, back when the defense was rolling at Michigan State, you would have players like, Darian Harris, who would spend a year on the scout team, redshirt, then maybe spend a year at 3rd string, then a year at 2nd string. Then he might start as a redshirt junior. Been in the program 4 years, been in the system 4 years, got those checks down. In a short way of asking that, I asked Rossi about that today. The transient nature of the college football player these days, and players coming and going. And he's only been here for 2 years as it is. Some of those guys are in year 2. Malik Spencer, Jordan Hall, Van Sumeren, Nikai Martinez, who's out. Amorian Smith last year didn't have the full thing in for various reasons. Nikai Martinez, they've not had him available to them. The corners are new. Wayne Matthews been around for the 2nd year, and I'm not sure that's as solvent as you would want it to be. When you have new players and it's year 2, can you give them as much volume as Rossi and the staff has tried to give these players? That's what Smith is talking about right now when he says, do we have too much in? And can Joe Rossi be the full defensive coordinator he wants to be without that bucket of knowledge across the board? And he had a quote today. What was it? It was, it's just about being simple. We would like to be multiple, but how can we show the opponents? He didn't say this, but how can you not telegraph your defense while also staying simple? Really hard to do. So what's wrong? What's been wrong with football? Offensive line, run game, and defense in general. Pass defense assignments. But then you saw the special teams become a problem at Nebraska. So, that's football stuff now. What has gone on through the whole football season and program for the last year and a half that has landed on this? I talked about, last year, if they keep all those, if NIL had been in place and you have better communication and you can give a barrel of money to Zion Young, Derek Harmon, Gino Vandermark, Simeon Barrow, all those guys, do they stay? Do you make a bowl game based on being stronger in the trenches? And some others. There's other players I'm forgetting. Blackstock, who was a little bit slow out of the gates here, but there's some others. Does that make a difference? I don't know. But so it's a lot of those things. In terms of your next part of the question, perhaps you could take us back to Haller's decision on extending an offer to Smith. Were there no other candidates he truly considered? Have it from good sources that, Jonathan Smith was in there. Matt Campbell was in there a little bit. Mike Elko, definitely. Remember Mike Elko when he was at Duke? He kind of was asked about it on ESPN Game Day, and he said, no, I'm not going to Michigan State. He had to say that. He's surrounded by Duke people. He was interested. And then A&M came open. Jimbo Fisher fired, and then they went after Stoops. That conked out. Then Elko became their guy, and there was some talk maybe A&M might not be his flavor, but Michigan State, Smith was higher than Elko on the pecking order. If you can get that done, you get it done. Those three were some main ones. And, because Smith, in the back channels, there was so much interest there that Haller didn't have to go much further beyond that. So that's why that happened. And I don't begrudge that decision. Now, I watched Oregon State against Arizona in 2023, and I thought there were some decisions there that didn't turn out well, especially at the end of the first half. Was his sideline demeanor the same there as it is now? I went back recently and watched Oregon State against Washington that year. I thought he was a little more animated then. Not sure why he's less now. Would that help? Possibly. I think that some different, but you're asking somebody to step out of their personality. You never want someone to do that. But these head coaching jobs are political jobs. You're a politician. You have to resonate with your constituents. That's part of it. And if things aren't going well, you need to make it look like you're on it. And maybe he is on it, but it's not the type of on it that the constituents are used to. Nobody's fault. That's just had an impact on fans leaving the stable. And I think some of you out there would probably agree. That's something that I've heard from a lot of people. Anyway, I want to invite people also. Got a lot of people here in the super chat area. If you leave a super chat tip in the tip jar here at the bar, I will entertain your question and look and check it out because I can't get through all of these. But those are the ones I can get to. Let's see. I thought I saw two more. We certainly do appreciate it. We're a lot of chat here, a lot of posts. I just saw it. Let me go find it again. Here it is. Eddie McBuckets. Eddie McBuckets. Where's he at? There he is, Eddie McBuckets. Thank you, Eddie McBuckets, for your contribution to the SpartanMag tip jar. Gather around. Eddie McBuckets says, go green, checking in from Pentwater. Pentwater. I love Pentwater, and that's all. You just put a tip in the jar. Appreciate that. Pentwater, you've seen the map. Pentwater's right over here, ladies and gentlemen, and it is the border of up north. Some of you aren't familiar with up north. It's Pentwater, Clare, West Branch, Pinconning, pretty much, is the border of up north. When you get here, the tree line changes, the forest changes. You get up north. You get what's the word I'm looking for? North Woods. You get into the North Woods boreal forest type of thing. The trees change. Start getting into the white birch. Start getting into the pines, jack pines, black spruce. Trees change right around there. Pentwater, one of the gateways to up north on the Lake Michigan side, which is currently the number one ranked Great Lake in the SpartanMag Great Lakes Power Poll. So Eddie McBuckets in Pentwater, nice place, good for him. J.R. Jr. J.R. Jr. with a big one, big tip in the tip jar. Thank you, J.R. Jr. How about J.R. Jr., ladies and gentlemen, doing a great job. We appreciate his support. And it's super chat of $19.99. Those are American dollars. We appreciate that from J.R. Jr. He says, other likely openings in the Big Ten this year, UCLA, Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, Maryland, and maybe Minnesota, Nebraska if Rule goes to Penn State, and even Michigan. Does this situation lead Bat to show restraint? Interesting question. There's more firings and movement this year than in probably the last maybe 5 years combined, I would say. Last year was very light. Year before that, it was light. I think partly because COVID had upset finances in many athletic departments across the country, that there was restraint in making changes last year. But this year, a lot of pent-up frustration coming to the surface, and fans are going to have to learn to deal with it because the Big Ten is a super conference now, SEC is a super conference now. Look at those schedules. And I mentioned this coming into the season. Last year in the Big Ten, the number of programs, there were 9 teams that were either 5-7, 6-6, or 7-5. Those numbers in there get coaches fired. but you're talking 9 out of 18 are going to be in that realm. And last year, it was programs like Michigan State, Nebraska, Wisconsin, UCLA, Michigan, Washington. There was another big hitter. Michigan, Nebraska, Washington. Yeah, anyway, there was 9 of them. I'm leaving out. I mean, Nebraska's a pretty big brand. Michigan's a big brand. Washington's a big brand. Wisconsin, Michigan State. Part of that's because Illinois and Indiana became upper echelon teams of the Big Ten last year. Whether or not it stays like that remains to be seen. But for that year, you're just always going to have a lot of 5-7, 6-6s, and 7-5s. That's going to lead to a lot of firings. I realize that Michigan State might not make it to 5-7 this year. I realize that Wisconsin is not going to make it to 5-7 this year. But around the country, when these losses add up, especially in the SEC, there's going to be fans that just will not stomach it well. So not just in the Big Ten. But you're asking other likely job openings. You mentioned UCLA, of course, it's already open. Penn State, it's open. Wisconsin, it's kind of looking like it's going to be open. You mentioned Iowa, you're assuming Ferentz is going to retire. Maryland, job opening, I don't see that. I think Loxley's done a pretty good job. They play an exciting brand. They bring in that Washington kid who I think is an NFL quarterback. He's a true freshman right now. They're doing some exciting things. They turn him loose, and they also run some between the tackles run game that's pretty solid. Maryland a lot of times kind of peters out. They get off to a hot start, and they don't end up with a very good record, but I think Maryland's looking pretty respectable right now. You said maybe Minnesota. I would doubt that. They're 4-2 right now. They got some big games coming up. There may be an opening at Minnesota if PJ Fleck moves on, and I think it's a good chance he's looking to move on because you're there long enough. It's time to move on. If the fans don't appreciate you enough, and he's had some great years there, and it's not easy to win at Minnesota. And I think PJ Fleck is a good football coach, and yeah, I think there's going to be an opening in Minnesota one way or another. Likely, if they get to, can he move on if he's 7-5? He's a good coach at 7-5. I don't doubt that could come open because he moves on, not because he gets fired. Nebraska, if Rule moves on, yeah. There's talk about if Rule moves on, who do they hire? Maybe they bring in Campbell from Iowa State. And there's coaching jobs elsewhere, Arkansas, Oklahoma State. The list is going to get longer. North Carolina, does James Franklin look at North Carolina? Does Campbell at Iowa State, does he look at North Carolina? Apparently, North Carolina's previous athletic director liked Campbell last year. And the athletic director ended up getting broomed out because all the donors, all those incredibly smart donors, wanted to go with Bill Belichick. I guess that was worth a Hail Mary a little bit. Didn't hurt the program too much. Sets them back 1 year. They're kind of a laughing stock, and they can deal with that. They're a basketball school. So does Iowa State come open if those dominoes hit? So it's going to be. So your point is, does Michigan State show restraint because the job market is going to be so volatile? Here's the deal: there's going to be a lot of openings because of firings. LSU, if they lose this weekend to Vanderbilt, those natives are incredibly restless there. If Tennessee had lost to Arkansas last week, those natives would have gotten restless like they always do. Arkansas's got an opening. Oklahoma State's got an opening. Florida's going to be open. Does Lane Kiffin leave Mississippi to go to Florida? If not, then does Jed Fish leave Washington to go to Florida? Michigan Wolverines, if they lose to Washington and lose to Michigan State, there's going to be some restless natives there, and they've got all kinds of money. They don't worry about buyouts, but Sharon Moore's buyout is only like $4 million. So, yeah, they could make a change real quick. Who would they go after? Here's my point. There could be a ton of openings, but there's not as many candidates, like proven candidates. There's not as many credible, qualified candidates to fill these openings like these donors and decision makers at these colleges that are firing people. There aren't going to be as many candidates to fill those openings as you may like and wish and hope for. PJ Fleck, if he goes 7-5 this year, he's going to be a candidate somewhere, and he'll be hired somewhere. And the fans there might say, man, he doesn't have that good of a record. Well, that's what's going to be out there, and I think he's a good coach. I heard people talking about, Jonathan Smith didn't, he had a losing record when Michigan State hired him. Well, who's the number 2 team in the country right now? Little quiz. Who's number 2 in the country? Answer, Miami Hurricanes. Go look at his record when Miami hired him. He's below 500. He's below 500 at FIU. Had a couple of years at Oregon. Mark D'Antonio was 1 game above 500 at Cincinnati. when Michigan State hired him. You want to go way back to a different era. Parsegian at Notre Dame was one game above 500 at Northwestern before Notre Dame hired him. I know that's a different era, but still a lot of pressure. What your record is at a lower level, sometimes just because you're below 500 at Oregon State doesn't mean you're a below 500 coach long term. He is at Michigan State so far, so we'll see where that goes. Thank you, J.R. Jr., for your contributions here to the program here at SpartanMag, SpartanMag.com. We invite other people to go ahead and throw a tip in the tip jar over here at in the super chat area, and we will get to your comment or your question. Question number 4, Zodiac in San Francisco. He says, if Michigan State loses to Indiana in the fashion we all basically expect, what's the likelihood Smith makes it to the end of the season percentage-wise? Great question, Zodiac, and for the reasons I mentioned earlier, I'm not going to speculate on that. Just I don't want my name attached to something like that because of the family members of the coaching staff. You may not respect that. You may call me a crappy reporter, and you might be right, but not going to do that. Let's go. Jesus, his name is Jesus in the super chat, and thank you to Jesus. I don't think that's blasphemous. I hope it's not. I don't want to offend anybody. Jesus, super chat, $4.99. Thank you. That's 1 cent short of an Abraham Lincoln. We certainly appreciate that. He says, give me Tony Annese. Why can't he win in Division I? Tony Annese, the very successful head coach at Ferris State, did a great job at Muskegon High School prior to that. I think he probably could. I think he's about 63 years old now. And Cignetti's showing that doesn't matter a whole lot. And I've watched Ferris State, and what they used to do a couple of years ago with a 2-quarterback system, and they that quarterback is a runner all the time, and they would use 2 quarterbacks, which, over the years, if you've got a quarterback run system, you're kind of tempting fate a little bit, unless you've got 2 of them. And over the years, having a 2-quarterback system has not worked for a lot of programs out there. They made it work. They were not a 2-quarterback system last year when they had Chambliss, who's now Trinidad Chambliss, who's now doing great things at Mississippi. They shifted to a 1-quarterback system last year because he was so good. They recognized what his talent was. I've not looked to see what Ferris State's doing this year, whether they're a 2-quarterback system or not. But I think the last 3 games they've outscored opponents like 249-0. They're dominating the Division II as the GLIAC. They still call it the GLIAC, right? In the state of Michigan. Doing a great job. And what they do on offense is dynamic. It is multiple, and they execute it extremely well. So the accountability is strong, and the creativity is strong. I don't doubt that he can move up. He's doing what Brian Kelly did at Grand Valley, basically. I don't doubt that he can move up. Now, Brian Kelly went from Grand Valley to Central Michigan, then to Cincinnati, then to Notre Dame. Annese, at this stage, going from Ferris State to Division I, Division I, I think MAC level. And, why a Central Michigan? I know Creighton's done a really good job at Eastern. They're not doing so good this year, but he's done a good job at Eastern Michigan. But Annese at one of the MAC schools, that's the step you would need to see before a step into Power 4, in my opinion. Does he have enough years to do that? Maybe not. Some people talk about some of the other situations off field that I'm not really aware of, but that comes up a lot with Annese. But there's no question he can run a program and get a lot of accountability and efficiency and excellence. That's for sure. So we appreciate that question and the contribution to the tip jar from Jesus. And mention where you're posting from also. We appreciate that. Desert Sparty from Phoenix says, Comp, have you heard of any locker room issues within this football team? I've not heard. I heard that there were some call-outs in the locker room immediately after the UCLA game. Some frustration, some people posting some people up. I'm not sure how heated it got. I certainly didn't hear about any scuffles or anything, which has happened in other years. I think that happened in 2016. It happened in 2002. But I'm not sure how heated it got, but there was some callings out. And Jonathan Smith mentioned on Monday that when they went over video on Sunday, talking about failure to cover running back out of the backfield on 2 occasions, he says some of that got called out. got called out. Does that mean coaches to players or players amongst each other? Not sure, but nothing physical. But I heard that there were some disagreements after that UCLA game, and you would expect that. I would hope. I would think. What do we have here? We've got. Holy cannoli! Who's this? Go GTV. Go GTV with a big contribution in the tip jar tonight. And we'll get right to his question. And Go GTP says, great reporting, go green. That's all I wanted to say. Man, we really appreciate that. Thank you for your support. And everyone else, give us a like here on the channel. And we would really appreciate that. So Go GTV, thank you for your support. And once again, if anyone has some questions or comments that they want to join the program tonight, go ahead and hit the super chat, and we will read your contribution. Thanks a lot, Go GTV. All right, we've got, what do we have here? Great numbers tonight right now, by the way. Really strong. And we want to say that you can call the show. I'll put that number, the phone number again also, that anyone wants to call the show. The lines are open. And let's get back to the mailbag. But before we do that, real quick, a note from Shupan. You guys love Shupan. Shupan is a great company dedicated to your Michigan State Spartans. Shupan, as you know, Michigan, the state of Michigan, you saw the map earlier. State of Michigan, the recycling rate has fallen from 90% to 73% in recent years, basically since COVID. 90% return rate to 73%. Michiganders are squandering $105 million per year by not taking back their bottles and cans. That's hurting our environment, ladies and gentlemen. So help the environment, help yourself, help your beaches, help your lakes, help your roads. They're your lakes. They're your rakes. And they're your loads. They're your roads. And help your beaches, help your lakes, help your roads. Take them back. That's a message from Shupan, a great Michigan company dedicated to recycling and dedicated to the Michigan State Spartans, dedicated to your Michigan State Spartans. Thank you to Shupan for that, helping the environment, helping all of us, and helping us in a very difficult football season for a lot of Michigan State fans. Question 6, John Don from Columbus, Ohio. He says, deep down, does Michigan State leadership really want to do what it takes to get back to the top of college football, or are they just okay being a 7-5 top of program that continues funding the other sports, and that is all? That's from John Don in Columbus. Is Michigan State content to be a 7-5 program? The answer to that is no. Michigan State is not content to do that. Guskowitz wants good football. Brought in J-Bat. J-Bat says his goal, his job is to fix Michigan State football. They want to be strong in football. Everybody's dedicated to it. Answer is no. They don't just want to be 7-5. Now, can they operate smartly enough to get to that end game? We're going to see during time, but over the course of time. But no, they are not. They're not. They don't want to be University of Chicago here. Great school, University of Chicago. They just dropped football altogether in the 30s or whatever. No, that's not the case. Ernie in Colorado says, we all know how good Nick Marsh and Jordan Hall are and how good Matt Gulbin is at center. Just curious, who are some of the other players on this team that are not getting enough credit for how they are playing this year? So a guy asking for some positive questions about players that are playing well this year, maybe not getting enough credit. Alex Van Sumeren, defensive tackle, solid every week. And I thought in this game had a late sack. His effort is good. He's playing a lot of snaps too, which is not easy at that position. And he's a guy that's had an interesting journey because he's had a lot of injuries early in his career. That last year he became kind of functional, starting 12 games. This year I think he's functional plus. I think Alex Van Sumeren doing a good job. Former 4-star recruit, playing like it. He's a good, solid player. And up the middle, Michigan State is solid, and he does a solid job with that. When they give up big runs and so forth, it's not Sumeren making problems. Michael Masunis was having a pretty solid year as a blocker, doing some things as a receiver. Last week had a big drop on third down. That didn't help. And we'll see how he does this weekend if he's healthy. Mekhi Frazier in flashes has been solid. I thought he showed some good quickness early in the season. That big fourth down conversion in Nebraska. but he kind of is what he is. I appreciate what he is. I think he's like a second string guy early in his career, but Michigan State's having to use him as a first stringer. But still, I think he's given you some good effort. There were some times in the Nebraska game, one of the tackles for loss, he was kind of dancing around a little bit too much when they needed him to hit the hole. Might have only gained 2 yards on that one, but there was a double team that I thought got some movement. I think it was Lepo and Phillips, and he didn't run behind it, danced around, ended up losing a yard. When if you just hit the double team, that he'd have gained a yard and a half or two. Other than that, I think he's been pretty good. Frazier is giving good effort for sure. Not the dynamic type of back at this time that Michigan State has had in the past or would want to have. Maybe he will develop into that. But early in his career, they're having to use him quite a bit. Let's go to, what do we have here? Looks like we've got, oh my gosh, what is this? We got another one. This is from Andy M. Andy M, thank you, Andy M. He's got a super chat comment or question. He says, quote, we don't have the money or tradition of some national powers. All right, we got a...
Call from
Michael from Kalamazoo.
to accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, we got Michael from Kalamazoo on the line, and we will get to him in a moment. Let me write that down. First of all, I want to get to the question here on the super chat from Anthony M. He says, quote, we don't have the money or tradition of some national powers. We do or did have an environment where there's less pressure, good quality of life. Do we surrender one of Michigan State's advantages by firing Smith? Quote, unquote. An excellent question from Anthony M. What he's saying, if I can paraphrase, is, Michigan State is not the pressure cooker that Auburn or Tennessee have been, where they eat their own, and it's been years. They've been in the wilderness. Tennessee was in the wilderness for 20 years before Heupel had a good year 2 years ago. Auburn, they fire a coach after they win a national title. To their credit, they've won a national title here and there. They cheated like hell to get Cam Newton, and they won a national title that year because Nick Saban kind of blew that Auburn-Alabama game that year. And then he took it out on Michigan State in the bowl game a few weeks later. Your point is Michigan State we did have an environment where there's less pressure and good quality of life. That's true. So do you squander that by cutting bait on Jonathan Smith in year 2? There will, if Michigan State makes a change this year, there will be people nationally that will be like, what the hell is Michigan State doing? Who does Michigan State think they are in year 2, not giving a guy like Jonathan Smith enough time? Well, if you're here and you're seeing how it's developing, you might be a little more understanding unless things get turned around. And it's really hard to get things turned around in this environment, not to use your term about the environment, but this climate in general. Tom Izzo talks about it in basketball all the time. Got to stay away from distractions. He's talking about other distractions, players, hearing from agents and worried about their playing time and things like that. And girls or whatever. There are distractions, nightlife, whatever. They usually keep a pretty good handle on that. Last year's team certainly did. But Izzo's always worried about distractions. Distractions are going to, the dirt bags and the whatever he calls it, distractions. Distractions are. Well, what's going on with Michigan State football right now is the ultimate distraction. The ultimate distraction. And you know what it is, just people, giving up on the coach and wanting to talk about what's next and so forth. And nationally, people will not be able to understand it. If you're here, like I said, maybe you understand it a little bit more. But now it's going to be even worse because of those distractions. And the problems that they're having are going to be probably even harder to fix and reverse because of these distractions. So does Michigan State lose some of that good guy image that would attract some coaches? There are some coaches out there that would take this job. They don't care. They want it, and they're out there and they're interested. Others, who would you, in terms of other candidates, that might sour them a little bit. There might be some coaches that would, if they've got 2 or 3 other schools that they're looking at, might sour them a little bit. That Michigan State would have these expectations that they would fire a coach in year 2. Yet Michigan State, in terms of natural football resources, probably ranks number 9 out of 18 in the Big Ten when Michigan State's operating pretty solidly. Now, they've got to do a lot of things over the football building. It's a nice structure. It's a nice facility, but it's not full of all the bells and whistles that they expected when they began fundraising for that They don't have all the things that they expected in there. And I posted some of those things. We're talking about that in the Underground Bunker message board. I'm not going to repeat it right now, but they've got other things they need to do to support the players health-wise, fuel intake, other things. So I say they're number 9 and 18 out of 18 in natural football resources, but in terms of rubber meets the road on the track right now resources, they are not in the top 9. Those things need to come up stronger. So I don't think that would have an impact on the search if there is a search this year, but you raise a really good question. If Michigan State had looked this crazy in the past, and I use the term crazy because on the outside it's going to appear crazy. If Michigan State had had a history of firing coaches in 2 years, to your point, I don't think Jonathan Smith would have bit on this job. If he'd have known Michigan State was that crazy, he wouldn't have taken the job. To answer your question, good point. All right. Once again, if you've got any questions, we still have Michael from Kalamazoo on the line. Michael, are you still there? I think we
Yeah,
lost.
I'm still here, Kyle. Thanks for taking
Sorry,
my call.
I don't have a producer here, so I just flat forgot that you're on there. I'm sorry I went so long with that point, but I guess I'm glad I made that point, whether people agree with it or not. Michael in Kalamazoo, Michigan State fan. What would you like to? What's on your mind tonight?
So I've been watching Michigan State. I was there before the D'Antonio era, so I watched that rise in the fall, and I agree that maybe it's a little too soon to kick Jonathan Smith out. But I'm wondering, so year 3, and you look at the recruiting class we have, and then you have to consider the transfer portal that'll come up. At what point, in your opinion, do we cut bait? And the specifics are, we knew that we needed to fix the O-line. I'm thinking about tackles here. And we need to get some pressure on the quarterback, so the D-line, so we're thinking about D-ends. If the recruiting class is poor, and we don't have transfer portal wins, so before the season even starts, do you feel like it will be time for him to go, basically, if it doesn't look on paper like he's fixed the problems that we've had for the first 2 years?
You're talking about like if the recruiting does not shape up by December, regardless of what happens on the field?
If not regardless. So let's say the season continues to play out and we wind up with maybe a 5-7 or a 4-8 record.
Uh-huh.
And considering the transfer portal. So let's say we got the recruiting class, it kind of is what it is. But if we don't get transfer portal wins or something that allows us to get some pressure on the quarterback or give people confidence that we're going to have pressure on the quarterback and we're going to protect Aiden Childs, like at what point would you say, okay, it's time to cut bait?
The scenario you're talking about is when the transfer portal closes in January. Like after the portal closes, would then
right? Correct.
I doubt that any program would fire a coach in late January based on portal evaluations, because a lot of those portal players, a lot of times we don't know who they are and how good they are until the following fall. So it'd be really hard to forecast things based on that. So I don't think anyone's going to get fired in January if the portal doesn't come around. But you raise good points about, they've got to improve the roster. There's no question about that. And you mentioned the recruiting class is what it is. I would stop you right there and say, with all these distractions and all this climate going on, there's going to be more decommitments. Michigan State's got a decent recruiting class. They were ranked number 29 in the country a few weeks ago. That's fallen off now. They've lost a couple of 4-stars. It's going to continue to slide. You mentioned the recruiting class is what it is. In this climate, with these distractions, this is some of the fallout when the fans, rightly or wrongly, when they turn on a coach, other coaching staffs utilize that, and it will hurt your recruiting, and it will hurt Michigan State's recruiting this year, regardless of what happens, who's in the office there.
So I agree. And basically to that point, if we don't look like we have a solution, and maybe it is just that guys need to be trained up, or basically guys need another year in the system to really show their stuff, the guys they've already recruited. But it doesn't, I've been following you almost every show, and I love what you do. And I follow a few other folks. I'm watching every game, and it just doesn't look like we've got the horses, as people have called it. We don't have the horses to go. And so, you either improve them or you replace them. And as you mentioned, the recruiting class is what it is, and it might get worse. And then the only other option is the transfer portal. And so if they don't win in the transfer portal, I'm just not sure.
Yeah.
We basically have to believe that that those guys that they already have are going to be second, third year in the season or in the system are going to be better. And I love Ashton Lepo, but he's not really working out. Rustin Young might become something. But I'm just not sure that we're going to have the horses in the first place. And if that's how it's going to look before the season starts, I just get a little anxious about how the rest of the season is going to go for him. And at what point do we cut bait?
I agree. If Michigan State sticks with Smith and he gets a third year, no question, evaluation in the transfer portal is going to be key to what they look like next year. I mean, evaluation there, allocation of resources, meaning allocation of your NIL money, making some good, smart money ball decisions is going to be hugely important no matter who the head coach is in January. That's a big part of college football. And for this roster and where it is right now, it's going to be imperative. If Michigan State makes a change, a big percentage of the current roster is going to be gone. They love Jonathan Smith. They're going to, in this day and age of the transfer portal and the transient nature of college football, people don't think twice about entering the portal. It'll be like what Purdue went through this year. Purdue had 71 new players this year. I don't know if it'll be that severe, but it could be. So that's part of it. If you want to cut bait, you're not only cutting bait, you're cutting line, reel, rod, boat, outboard motor, everything. That's part of it if you want to do that. You mentioned it doesn't look like they have the horses. In some ways, I would agree with you, and I think Jonathan Smith was getting at that when talking about one-on-one losses last week against UCLA. However, not only is there a horses problem, but there's just assignment problems, not covering people. That has nothing to do with talent. That's just not being on the same page. They're looking to why that's happening. It's happening in week 6 of a must-win game situation in a must-produce season, and you're still getting it. That's a problem. The tackles for loss on the offensive line didn't happen as much against UCLA, but it certainly happened way too many times against USC and Nebraska, and that's a problem from last year. Got to get those things solved. Not getting solved, that's a problem. Getting a punt blocked, the penalties against Nebraska, having to punt twice and it gets blocked. Almost had another one blocked against UCLA. That's a problem. Coverage, punt coverage. These are just loose screws that don't have anything to do with talent. So I would ask you, when Michigan State played Nebraska, did you think Michigan State was at a talent disadvantage against Nebraska?
Oh, that's a really good point. And no, I don't think so. That is a really good point. I'm rooting for Jonathan Smith.
Uh-huh.
Sorry.
And I know that I can tell you're an astute observer because you know who Rustin Young is. There's a lot of people out there that have opinions that don't know who the second string offensive tackle is. You do. That showed me something. So I'm sure you're watching it closely and you're rooting for Michigan State hard. That's why I posed that question to you. Because when I've spoken with like Paul Konendijk or Big Mooby, when we compare notes about the game, I didn't think Michigan State lost the Nebraska game based on a talent disadvantage. I think they lost that game because Nebraska made fewer mistakes.
Absolutely, 100% agree. And I'll kind of close it up with this. I'm rooting for Jonathan Smith. I'm rooting for the team. And I do believe that it's possible to turn it around, but I don't know if he's going to have enough time for all the reasons that have been, harped on over the last few weeks from everybody. But I am hoping that they've got a winning formula that they can put together and they have enough time. Or maybe they hit the portal, they kind of get lucky, or it's a little bit of luck and a little bit of skill in the portal to turn some things around, and maybe even this season they might bring it together. So.
All right, great, Michael. You're a good man, I can tell, and you're a Spartan, and there's nothing.
Yeah, I've called in.
You're a Spartan, and there's nothing. You're a Spartan, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's nothing you can do about it. You're a Spartan. You're in.
Absolutely. And shout out to Chupan. One of my best friend's son works there. So
yeah.
Shout out to Chupan. They're a good company as well.
Kalamazoo Company. All right. Thanks a lot, Michael. You have a good evening, good week. Thanks a lot out there. Out there in Kalamazoo. Right. They say Grand Rapids is beer city. I mean, Kalamazoo could be considered beer city in the state of Michigan also. What do we got here? Looks like we got Matthew Pitlock. Matthew Pitlock. How about Matthew Pitlock, ladies and gentlemen? Yes. Ringing that bell. Thank you very much. If you're new to the show, we've got a lot of comments over here, a lot of people listening to the show right now, and I can't get to all the comments. If you want your comment or question read here on SpartanMag Live, tip jar will get it done, and we will read those if you hit the super chat thing and give us a tip jar. It also supports our endeavors at SpartanMag.com and the Spartan Mag community and the Spartan Mag news organization. Matthew Pitlock says, unfortunately, college football has become a game of deciding the best time to quit. MSU should not get caught up in it. Patience, continuity, and culture can be a real advantage in this new era. Matthew with a strong point there, and I don't disagree. I think you might see some strong athletic departments with strength, if they have strong support from the administrative level, the board of trustees, board of regents, whatever you want to call it, and the president. When an athletic director has that backing, he can be a little stronger on some things. Too often, athletic directors go down with the ship with the football coach. This is what I'm trying to get at. You know, things are so expensive now. To hire a new coach is very expensive. To fire a coach is very expensive. And fans have always been fanatical. They've always had strong expectations, demanding. That's part of it. And, you know, they're paying $50, $75, $100, $150 a ticket, even more than that for chairback, seat licensing, parking. They're in it for a lot of money, right? And they think they deserve a winning football team. Problem is, half the teams in the Big Ten are going to lose this weekend. And then the next week, another half are going to lose. Then the next week, another half are going to lose. Over the course of time, there's a lot of losses to go around, and more fans get angry. Here's the situation. I'm not saying this will happen at Michigan State. I know it's not going to happen this time. But when the fans turn on a coach in year 2 like this, at some point, to your point, you're going to see athletic directors, I would hope, would stand up to the fans and say, fans, we understand it. We appreciate that you're supporting the team, but booing isn't helping anything. I'm sticking with the coach. He's the coach. We are sticking to the plan, and we're going to continue with the course. We're going to stay the course. He's the coach. I've got the backing of the president and the board. You can boo if you want, and I understand it, but we are sticking with this coach. I think that's going to happen at some athletic departments here and there. Maybe it will, maybe it won't, but only if the athletic director has true belief that he's got support from the top. And if that happens and you stick it out, you might see teams do like Virginia's doing now in year 4, Tony Elliott turning the corner. I don't know how long it's taken at Georgia Tech. Who else did I mention? Braun when he was at Purdue. Especially some of these programs, but they were able to do it because they don't have that level of expectation or anxiety, knee-jerk reactions. Maybe because they haven't had that kind of success in past years. So in some ways, it's a little bit of an evening out process. Why is Indiana good all of a sudden? Because they were able to throw a Hail Mary on Cignetti because they had no other better opportunities. They're like, what the hell? We've sucked for 100 years. Let's try it. And it worked. Virginia, well, let's stick with this guy another year. We're not very good very often, and it worked. Maybe that's a way of evening things out. They don't have a draft in college football, but sometimes the bottom feeders can back into an unforeseen advantage like that. So the question again from Matthew is interesting. He says, unfortunately, college football has become a game of deciding the best time to quit. MSU should not get caught up in it. Patience, continuity, and culture can be a real advantage in this new era. Interesting. If Michigan State losing these games is one thing. If they were more competitive and more sound, D'Antonio lost some games along the way in his first 5 years and in his last 5 years. Lost some games, but gosh, they were correct a lot. They would have some busts here and there. Offenses are meant to offer deception and capitalize on errors. But as D'Antonio used to say, playing square on defense, defeating block with the correct angle, sending the ball to the help. Over the course of time, when you're playing some great teams, you might get steamrolled by some good opponents. But the D'Antonio teams, even with the offenses that drove some people crazy when the talent level dropped a little bit, but D'Antonio teams were solid, they were physical, and when there were mistakes, you could see that D'Antonio was on it. He was working on it. Smith has a different way of doing it, and if they'd been winning, his demeanor would have been like, well, he's like John Wooden. He doesn't say much, but gets results. When they're not playing well, and there are loose screws, and they are beating themselves, and it doesn't, I don't know for sure, but from the fans' point of view, it doesn't look like he's doing anything about it. I'm sure he is in practice. We've got to assume that, right? But Michigan State fans are used to a D'Antonio approach, an Izzo approach, Saban. like most coaches are. Smith is different. He certainly got it going at Oregon State, which is not easy. But these are political jobs to your constituents. You need to make them think that you're on it. And if Michigan State were losing games, but playing a brand of football that fans could see that they were close, but maybe just losing because of talent, then what you're saying would hold more water, I think, in this situation, that MSU should not get caught up with it. Patience and continuity and culture can be a real advantage. I agree, and it's been an advantage at Virginia this year. And there's some others I'm not thinking of right now. However, you got to be sound. I remember that game. I've cited it many times. Michigan State lost to Iowa. Last play of the game, slant to McNutt, touchdown. And Iowa was good. It was a good, solid, strong night game, hard-hitting game. Michigan State fitting their gaps, taking on blocks, defeating blocks, containing a very good Iowa running attack. Might have been year 3 of the D'Antonio era, or year 2, I can't remember. Iowa came in top 15 team in the country. And you could I've told the story a lot of times. Before the last play, there was like a timeout. It was like 4th down, 9 seconds to go. This was going to be the deciding play of the game. And I can't remember if I said this to Paul Konendijk, but I certainly thought it. I was like, it doesn't matter who wins this game. I was like, the brand of football Michigan State put forward here. I told Paul, I said, Paul, we got a real football team to cover now. Because in the John L. Smith things, they were up and down, up and down. Bobby Williams, up and down, up and down. I'm like, even if they lose this game, they have shown through 59 minutes of football, 59 minutes and 45 seconds, they can play some buttoned up, hard-hitting, quality brand of football that eventually is going to yield some good things. And Michigan State lost, and I was like, tough loss, but the future looked good that night. On a loss, to me. I'm not always right, but I turned out to be right that night. Because there's a brand of football that was shown. Michigan State's not shown that the last year and a half. If they had, even with this record, I think more fans would see it, and there wouldn't be this climate right now that Michigan State's having to deal with. And you don't want to ask somebody to be something that they're not, but that's just the situation. I'll put it back up here. I know it's getting late out there. And we appreciate the contribution to the tip jar there. If you want a comment or a question, go ahead and hit the super chat, and we will bring your comment or question to the show. Question number 8, Pierre St. Pierre. Okay, so I got back to this question. Ernie in Colorado says, just curious, who are some of the other players on the team who are playing well that are not getting enough credit? I mentioned Alex Van Sumeren. I thought Masunas was in that category despite the drop pass last week. Frazier, playing solid second-string running back, although he's a starter, in my estimation. Amari Kelly, the wide receiver transfer, did well early in the year and certainly got a lot of compliments for that. By the way, I'm surprised we haven't seen Rodney Bullard. I don't know if he's healthy. They went deep to him one game earlier in the season, maybe against Boston College. He hasn't played many snaps. Heard a lot about his speed during preseason camp. Maybe he's dinged up. I don't know, but I think he has some ability, but we haven't seen it yet. Mike from Kalamazoo mentioned Rustin Young. Rustin Young, I thought, played pretty well against USC, and I was a little surprised he didn't play more against Nebraska. There was some talk about that, because of the crowd noise, they didn't really want to change up the tackles a whole lot, but the tackles struggled that game. I think we're going to see more of Rustin Young now, a lot more. And he came in, I don't know what he played, 10, 15 snaps against UCLA. He was involved in the one sack fumble when Aiden Childs dropped back, sack fumble. Rustin Young was playing pass protection, and he had the dude, I think it was 52. Pass protection was good enough for a moment, and then he got wiped at the end. And I talked to some Michigan State coaches, and they agreed with me that his initial pass protection was solid enough, and then he got wiped at the end. And on that one, Childs, if you looked at the replay from the end zone replay, he's getting ready to throw it, and then he stops, and then it gets knocked out. So what happened? What did he see? I thought initially when I was looking at it, it looked to me like Jack Velling. It looked like zone with 2 linebackers, and usually the receiver going through that area, if it's zone, you just sit down in an open area over the ball. And I thought that's what he was going to do, but Velling kind of drifted and ended up being covered by another guy, so that's why Childs stopped, and then the ball was knocked out. not Childs' fault, not Rustin Young's fault. I talked to some coaches, and they said it wasn't Velling drifting too much. It was actually two receivers, and I've not gone back to look to see who the other receiver was, but they were both kind of wrong about where they were going based on being over the ball, and there was an error in the routes that were run. And that makes Childs stop. He gets sacked. He fumbles. People think it's Rustin Young's fault or Childs' fault. It was the receiver's fault, which is just another indication it's an 11-man game. Everybody has an impact on all of it. And it's another screw that's loose that it's a problem. And type of stuff that gets you on these hot seats early. Even though, I like I said in the VCast, after the game on Saturday, I've never been a guy, I would never want to be somebody that would, I've always been a 4-year plan guy, maybe a 5-year plan. Perlis got a 5th year, won a Rose Bowl in 5 years. I know that's a different era. Saban got a 5-year plan, 5th year, top 10, took another job. Year number 4 for Saban, the greatest college football coach of all time at Michigan State, 1998, did not make a bowl game. Lost a couple games on onside kicks, lost to Colorado State. Blown out by Oregon. Nick Saban, year 4. Perlis did not make a bowl game in year 4. They were 6-5, didn't get a bowl bid. Minnesota was 6-5, they got a bowl bid. Michigan State did not. Not sure why. Lorenzo White was injured that year, did not help. Year 4, Perlis, hot seat. Year 5, Sports Illustrated had him as a hot seat coach. Perlis loved to remind all the media of that all season when Michigan State had a great year in 87, won the Big Ten, won the Rose Bowl, finished number 9 in the country. Back, year 2, if you had back then, Perlis made a bowl game like in 85, the Cherry Bowl, sold a near sellout at Silverdome, 75,000. Michigan State's first bowl game in 20 years because the previous bowl game prior to that was 1965 Rose Bowl. And then in the Big Ten, you could not go to, the Big Ten would only send one team to bowl games every year. Went to the Rose Bowl, everybody else stayed home because of academics. That changed in 1976, I think it was. They sent a few more teams to bowl games. But Michigan State, 76, didn't get a bowl game. 77 didn't. Then they were on probation for the great team in 78. 79, Kirk Gibson. And then Darryl Rogers leaves. Muddy Waters comes in. They're on probation. Scholarships are down. 80, 81, 82. Scholarship reduction, no TV. Really screwed up the program. Then Perlis is hired. 83, 84, slow build. They get back to a bowl game in 85. 20 years in the wilderness from all that. I mean, they had some teams that were good enough to go to bowl games. The 1974 team with Levi Jackson, which upset number 1 Ohio State. Michigan State that year went 7-4 and finished like number 14 in the country in the UPI. That's a legit top 15 team. No bowl game because of the Big Ten rule at the time. So there were some teams that were good enough to get bowls. It's not like they were bad all 20 of those years, but when Perlis finally got into a bowl game in 85, people were excited. Then 86, they went to the Freedom Bowl in Birmingham, Alabama, or Independence Bowl, one of those. Lost to Georgia Tech. And then that's like 86 or 85. 84 was Cherry Bowl. 85 was Independence Bowl, fall of 85. 86, 6-5, no bowl. And that's hot seat. But those 2 years going to those bowl games really had Michigan State fans on board. Like, we're making progress. We're increasing our toughness. This is heading in the right direction. So although Sports Illustrated said going into year 5 that he was on the hot seat, I'm not sure that was the case. In today's climate, would that have been enough? I don't know. Getting back to more players that are playing pretty well that we're not talking about. Rustin Young, we're going to see more of him. I thought last year against Ohio State he was not ready. Bless his heart. He's a true freshman against Ohio State. Didn't go well, but he's done better this year. I think he's got a decent future, and I think we're going to see more of him here late in the season. We'll see how he does if he plays 60 snaps against Indiana, Michigan, some of these other teams. Indiana's really good with the pass rush. Kamara has about 15 pressures on the year. Only 1 sack, but he's an NFL pass rusher. And then the kid from Pennsylvania, the sophomore, Mariota, whatever his name is. I don't know. He's gotten a lot of pressure too. And the linebackers, Jones and Fisher. The other one, is it Jones? The kid from Ohio. When they bring him on blitzes, he gets home a lot. Linebacker, inside linebacker. But yes, Rustin Young, we'll see how he does here in the future. He's done all right as a second stringer. Luka Vincic was headed in the right direction until he got hurt. Christian Phillips was headed in the right direction until he got hurt. We'll see how long he's out. Anilou Lafayette was making progress as a young pass rusher. Now he's out for the season. Ice Moa has looked pretty good. Redshirt sophomore looked pretty good in spurts as a third down guy and a second string inside linebacker. These are not like frontline guys that are really playing great and doing some great things because they're losing games. People aren't, there's not a lot of players doing great things. But these guys in the second string are showing some life. I thought Quindarius Dunnigan played well, played hard last week. Had to play more snaps because Jalen Thompson was out with an injury. Dunnigan spoke to media today, and I thought he was pretty solid. Malcolm Bell's been all right at corner. And interestingly, they did not start Bell or Josh Eaton against UCLA. They started Chance Rucker and Aiden West. Rossi was asked about that today, and he said just, it was a competitive thing, just giving some more guys another shot, rewarding them with competing well, that type of thing. But Malcolm Bell and Josh Eaton came back on the field, I don't know, third drive, third series, something like that. I'll be curious to see if Michigan State changes up some things maybe at the safety position. Nakai Martinez is coming back. I thought Devin Cromwell came in and showed some effort. And at some of these other positions, effort might not have been grade A. I'll be curious to see what happens at the safety position this weekend in that regard. Question 8, Pierre St. Pierre from the Pacific Northwest says, is Michigan State getting left behind, or are we already gone? With 2 straight whiffs at head coach, no functional NIL structure, and apathetic fans, where does it go from here? Apathetic fans, they are losing faith. They're losing interest a little bit, maybe a lot. And the nature of the transfer portal has made it harder for old school fans to remain fans. It's not a problem for the fans in Bloomington. They're loving it. Not a problem for the fans at Arizona State last year, college football playoff, loving it. Not a problem for the fans at Georgia Tech or Vanderbilt, loving it. Not a problem for the fans at Virginia this year, loving it. At Michigan State, Wisconsin, fan interest, not only is the team losing, but the new climate with NIL and transfer portal, people are kind of evacuating the bandwagon, and not just because the team's losing. If you win, they'll come back. Good crowd for homecoming, a little bit late arriving, which is the way it is at noon kickoffs a lot. By the end of the first quarter, I thought the stadium was 90% full, which is a good showing. I thought weather was good. Foliage was good around town. Apple cider was sweet from Quality Dairy. Appreciate all of that. So the fans are still having their tailgate, seeing their old friends, enjoying football. They're not totally ignoring what's going on, so they're still in. Maybe not all in, like they would be if they're winning, but apathetic fans, not as into it as they used to be, but they're still paying attention. He says, where does it go from here? He says, I feel like, this is Pierre St. Pierre from Pacific Northwest. He says, I feel like with our current president and athletic director that there is a high ceiling to win here, but the football program has taken more haymakers than Apollo Creed at this point. Apollo Creed, Creed was pretty good at avoiding shots. I'm not sure how many haymakers. I guess, he did get hit by Clubber Lang a lot. And no, he never fought Clubber. He fought Drago, and it didn't end well. Fictional, of course. And Balboa hit him a few times, but Creed won that decision in Rocky 1. People forget that Creed won the decision, and they said it was a split decision, but no, Creed won that fight on my card, no question about it. He did take some shots though, but Creed had great footwork, that had the jab movement, head movement, all those things. But you're right, Creed took some shots. I'd say it's more accurate to say they took more shots than Rocky Balboa. Rocky Balboa got hit a lot. Anyway, you say Michigan State's taking more haymakers than Apollo Creed at this point. What is the next step? What's the next step? What's the next step? 2 straight whiffs at head coach, he says. No functional NIL structure. Need functional NIL structure. Need continued support from the top of the administration, the president, athletic director on down. They are in concert with one another. They have to make sure that they're doing all the right things NIL-wise in the future. Next step, coaching-wise, check back in the coming weeks. Not exactly sure. Good questions. I don't have the answers. Question 9, Mike from West Palm Beach says, getting a little ahead here, but was wanting your thoughts on both of Indiana's coordinators, offensive coordinator Mike Shanahan, defensive coordinator Bryant Haynes. He says, I'm impressed what they've both been able to accomplish at not only Indiana, but also at James Madison in regards to how it looks execution-wise on the field, but also the stats that they've both produced, yards, points per game, etc., has really caught my attention. Your thoughts, please, Jim. Yes, I would agree. Coordinators from Indiana and what he's had at James Madison, big part of the secret sauce for Cignetti, not only at James Madison, but also at Indiana. Those two coordinators are young and they're excellent. I don't know if you're asking about them for head coach candidates. I think they could be head coach material in the future. And last year when Indiana really had their great season, I didn't know much about Shanahan and Haynes. I looked them up and their backgrounds. I think Haynes was at Elon, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and a few other places. That defense for Indiana, I mean, the offense gets a lot of credit and attention, but the defense is sound, physical, correct. Camaro, they bring in from James Madison. He's an NFL pass rusher. Fisher, the inside linebacker, he's like a consummate. He plays linebacker like a bulla. He's excellent. He was all Sun Belt at James Madison. This is his second year. He runs sideline to sideline and shows up and punishing hitter, and his teammates funnel the ball back to him, and he funnels the ball to them, and they arrive square, and they swarm, and they're correct, and they're good. The corner's good from James Madison. The safety, number 7, transferred from Mississippi this year. He's about 205 pounds, plays big for a safety. Number 7's got like 4 or 5 interceptions. Arrives, thumps. Last year I thought they'd get out of their gaps a little bit, and they're a little bit overzealous with pursuit and so forth. I thought maybe they might be susceptible to some traps and things like that. I've not studied them a lot this year to know what... because Oregon did not have much success on offense against those guys. I've not watched the Iowa-Indiana game yet. Well-coached team on defense. On offense, I mean, you've seen them. They incorporate the RPO really nicely. One of their staples is the back shoulder fade to both sidelines. They've got that down pretty well, even with the new quarterback. They established it last year with the first-year quarterback. They got the best quarterback from the MAC. Last year was a good quarterback for them. This year they go out and get Mendoza, who I saw a mock draft today that some people are projecting him to be the number 2 player taken overall in the NFL draft this spring. Really, really good quarterback. Arm strength, processing, all of it. I'll be looking at it when I watch the Iowa game. Iowa almost beat them. It was at Iowa where, Iowa, that's a house of horrors playing there when you march in there with a big fat record. They love to fatten you up and put a knife in you. Indiana escaped that. But you win at Iowa in those circumstances, then you go and you win at Oregon. Who can't you beat? If you can win those games, and believe me, don't sleep on Iowa. You might be able to surprise Iowa, catch them napping, but when you're going in there with a big record, buckle up because it's going to be, as Perlis used to say, pack a lunch and a flashlight because it's going to be an arduous task. Indiana found that out, but they won that game. If you can win at Oregon, you can beat anybody. Now, whether you can maintain that level all the way to December and January when the trophies are handed out. But right now, they wouldn't be afraid to play Alabama, Georgia. Who's the best team in the SEC? Is it A&M? I mean, we're going to see what happens with Alabama and Tennessee this weekend. There's no juggernaut in the SEC anymore. Will there be in the near future? Maybe. But the days of Georgia just being so much better than everybody else, or Alabama so much better than everybody else, or the one year when LSU was so much better than everybody else, some super teams coming out of the SEC, not happening anymore. Saban leaves. I think overall it's going to make the conference not as physical as it was. The SEC was not physical in the Spurrier era. That's why Nebraska put a hole in them. That conference changed when Saban went there. And it spilled over what he did at LSU. It spilled over into Georgia. It spilled over. LSU remained strong. Then went to Alabama. He had an impact on 3 programs that way. And it didn't quite take hold with Muschamp at Florida or South Carolina, but it made the whole conference tougher, physically tougher. I thought SEC was cotton candy football in the Spurrier era. Saban changed that. He changed that conference. And then he got out when the NIL happened. As much as they love football down there and as much as they like to cheat, now everybody can pay players. And that has hurt their secret sauce. There's a lot of teams that are struggling because they can't work in the margins anymore. And there are some teams still working in the margins. The new way to cheat is to pay NIL deals without reporting them to NIL Go. That's happening. So anyway, how did I get on that tangent? We've got another super chat here from Coach Chris, I think. Coach Chris. Thank you to Coach Chris. $10 in the tip jar. Thanks, Coach Chris. Appreciate that. His Coach Chris says, Jim, I'm still in on Smith. The coaches, though, surprised at last week's performance, remain steadfast. The team is still bought in, and they respect their coaches. This program is not broken. So that's from Coach Chris, coming from a coach. Respect his thoughts on that. Others may disagree, but I certainly respect your opinion. We'll see what it looks like this weekend. It's going to be really tough. Not only is Indiana really good, they're returning home as heroes. They've been heroes for a long time, but that stadium is going to be electric like it's never been at Memorial Stadium. And they're going to be jacked up, and they're good, and they're deep, and they're healthy. And they got an NFL first-round draft choice quarterback. And Cignetti is not shy about lighting it up. And what they did to Illinois a few weeks ago, what they beat Illinois 69-10, whatever it was, that can happen to Michigan State this weekend. Michigan State's going to have to play well. I think Michigan State's an underdog by 24 points in the BetMGM app. Michigan State's going to have to play well to stay within 21 points. But Chris, Coach Chris, duly noted, and Coach Chris also says it's hard to get up when you're still a little immature of your manhood, and your manhood's been taken away from you. I'm reading some of your other posts because you were so kind to do a tip jar. I'm reading what else you say. They can get right by the end of the season. This week will be tough. Things can change, though. So Coach Chris, always optimistic. All right, let's go to question 10 from Maria in Boston. One more thing about defensive coordinator Bryant Haynes at Indiana. You know, the defense, they do a good job disguising their defenses. I've not studied them this year, but last year they did a good job disguising without screwing themselves up, disguising it well enough that you don't really know what it declares. And by the time you know what it declares, the pass rush gets to you. And the pass rush was good enough with Kamara last year. He only has 1 sack, but he's got 15 hurries. He's an NFL pass rusher. So they make you read just long enough, then they get you. That's how Michigan State got to Raiola. Because Raiola's not good, like we said in the pre-snap read for Nebraska. He's not good going from his first read to his second read. His second read, he's lost. That's his weakness. That's why he's not going to be an NFL quarterback. He'll get drafted. Somebody will be stupid enough to draft him. Nothing against the kid. I wish him well. But that's how Michigan State got the sacks on Raiola, get him to the second read. Indiana, you've got to read. You almost have to go to a second read, and then the pass rush gets you. And their defense is good. So Haynes is good. I could see, if those guys move on at some point, then it'll be on Cignetti to reload at coordinator. And there's a lot of good coaches out there that have not reloaded when they've lost coordinators. Dabo Swinney. All right, Maria P. in Boston says, Comp, how far away is BAT getting all donors working together? How far away is he from getting all donors working together? With that, is there talk on the short list of coaches to replace Smith? Obviously, to get donor support, he will need to get donor approval, which Haller did not do and is one of the reasons we are in this mess. Maria P. reiterating what Justin Spiro said earlier when Justin called the show here. Speaking of which, I know it's getting late, but I will invite people on the West Coast to go ahead and call. And also, we appreciate the donations to the tip jar, super chat, tip jar. Appreciate that. Maria, short list. All athletic directors have a short list at all times. So nothing this season has changed that. Is it more realistic now? Yeah, I'm not going to lie about that. I'm sure that it is. So is there more talk? I would imagine so. I imagine there is a little more talk. I haven't heard it from any primary sources. I've not heard that, but we can imagine that might be going on. I don't know, as far as what Haller said, like what Spiro was saying earlier in the show, you kind of reiterate, you agree with him that the donor support Haller did not do, and that's one of the reasons we are in this mess. I mentioned earlier one of the reasons he didn't keep donors involved or didn't communicate with them is because he wanted no leaks. But like Spiro said, Haller would have done well to have a meeting with the donors and just say, hey, he may have done that actually and just told all the donors, I'm shutting it down. I'm not talking to anybody. I think Haller did say that publicly, but he must not have had a meeting with the donors specifically and said, he should have said, I love you guys. We're going to need your money, going to need your support, but I'm going in the submarine. You're not going to hear from me in 3 or 4 weeks. I don't want any leaks to upset the process. That's why he didn't communicate with donors. Should he have done a better job communicating with them as to why? Maybe so. I was not aware that donors, I'm sure that donors were upset about that, a little miffed. I don't know what it's like to be super rich, but I have seen people that are super rich that get a little miffed easily. And also those people that are super rich that do real well as titans of industry in certain areas also seem to think that they know everything about football. Not always the case. Just because you do real well in one area and have a lot of money does not mean that you also know everything about hunting, fishing, and football coaching and everything else. Not everybody can be as brilliant as the great Ted Williams was. But Maria raises some great points. That's why Haller kept things quietly. And what is her question? How far away is Bat from getting all donors to work together? It's a great question. I know Bat is very, he is great with communication. He's a great listener, kind person, and also makes you feel like you're heard when he's speaking with you. And he's into fundraising. That was his jam at Georgia Tech. So fundraising is a huge deal. They're kicking off some $1 billion capital initiative, I think, for athletics. I don't know. Or is that for the whole university? $1 billion is a lot. It's got to be for the whole university. Athletics is part of that. And he will be hitting up those donors big time for sure. So I'm sure that he is shaking some hands, kissing some babies, getting to know people. And I think it's genuine. I think he really likes to get to know people, and I think that'll come off. And that's what he's here to do. That's why I came to Michigan State, to try to get that going. And I think that I suspect with his personality and with Michigan State's donors out there, and there are some that want to help a lot and some that have pretty good bit of money, I suspect that he will get them on board. But it can't be the same 2 or 3 heavyweight donors all the time. It needs to be broad-based. And there are some targets out there that I think he's got the personality and the energy to do well in donations, more so than anyone since the Hollis-Luana triumvirate. Who was the third part of that triumvirate? D'Antonio a little bit. They raised pretty good funds back then. I think he can do that and then some. And I think he enjoys it. Adding to the NIL part of it, that needs to get straightened out. And they need to be fluid with it. Whatever they thought they were going to do to begin with, if they need to change some things, they need to be open-minded about that, in my opinion. But your question, is he close to getting the donors to work together? Yeah, I think he is. And the donors, I'm still looking into that a little bit. You know, donors can get a little headstrong, but I think Michigan State's got a good situation with donors because there's some big money donors, but I don't think they're all wanting to be bulls in China shops running the department. Like, we're going to do it this way. You got to listen to me. Otherwise, I'm going to pull some political strings. I don't think there's a lot of that. I think there's a lot that want to help, but not interested in being the bull in the China shop donor. I might be wrong about that. Feel free to email me if you've got any information on people. I'd always like to hear that. But what I hear about donors, I think there's some potential there, not only money-wise, but personality-wise. Nobody out there is trying to, you know, I'm trying to think of a negative example. I can think of one, but I don't want to mention his name. Anyway, I think there's potential there for things to be good in that regard, but it's going to take some time. They've got a lot of things they need to do. Derek Greer with a tip in the tip jar. Ring the bell. Thank you, Derek. $4.99 from Derek Greer. And remember, if you're new to the show right now, we've got a lot of comments over here, but I can only get to the ones that come with a tip in the tip jar in the super chat mode. And Derek Greer's got one now. He says, if Michigan State decides to fire Smith, why not do it during the second bye week after the Minnesota game? Great question, great point. And truth be known, if you want to know what me and some of the other people talk about when we pull up a bar stool, talk about things, it's things like that. And I think that is possible. I don't want to say that because, again, I don't want my name attached to that stuff and have it get back to, you know, bullies in middle schools making fun of assistant coaches' children and things like that. I said that early in the show. I don't want my name attached to that stuff. But you raise a good point. I won't comment on it any further than that. But you raise a good point. And I suspect, I don't know if they're thinking along those lines or not, but Good point. Thank you for the tip jar contribution. Question 11, Satchmo Jones from Berrien Springs, Michigan says, he's got 3 things. Do you think Childs is the leader Michigan State needs on the field and in the locker room? Because in body language and press, I do not see it, says Satchmo Jones. He says, I see a lot of ego on this team from a handful of guys. All right, the question right there, do I think Childs is a leader? I think he is. I think it's important to him. I think he's worked hard. I think he puts his body on the line. And that right there is enough of a visual to be a leader. And in the locker room, I don't know what his personality is in the locker room. I think he's a good, sharp kid. I suspect that he probably communicates pretty well. Last year, when they lost that game to Rutgers, he said, we got some guys, we got to find out who wants to be on this team. Some guys don't. And some wide receivers were cut loose, So he wasn't afraid to say what he thought about that situation and also about the fans. So he has some strong opinions. Those are ingredients to be a good leader, but you can't be a really good leader until and unless your game is truly on track. And we've seen in the last couple of weeks, his has kind of gotten off track. He certainly looked like he was on the rise after the Boston College game, the USC game. Nebraska game, pass protection failed, run game failed, windy day, best pass defense in the country. All of those things knocked him off course. Comes again against UCLA, great weather, great conditions. UCLA's man-to-man coverage was good. Pass protection was good. Not a lot of separation against that good man-to-man coverage, which was surprisingly good. And a few times he had open receivers, and you saw it, he was missing people. Has he lost some confidence? Jonathan Smith acknowledged that his confidence has taken a shot. So he needs to get his confidence back, get in a rhythm, and then get some wins. Then he can lead even better and better. It's all going to be very hard to do. But I think he does have the potential to be a leader. I'm not sure the game's going to follow it right now, though. Point B from Satchmo Jones in Berrien Springs. He says, also, what are your thoughts on the offensive line and defensive line? I believe they need to work as a unit and a brotherhood with trust for the man next to you. With all the swapping in and out, I don't think that has been fostered. Solid opinion. Offensive line, they're putting people in and out, especially early in the season when the schedule was a little weaker because they wanted to manufacture some experience and some depth and some versatility so that if injuries happen, you can move people from here to there, here to there. Also, you can move people to keep people fresh through the course of the season. That was the plan. As it's turned out, they've had 3 injuries, so now that's kind of out the window. They're not doing as much mixing and matching on the offensive line. They would like to, but they don't have the people anymore, so that's out the window, and they're just going to try to hold on, and I'm not sure the O-line is going to I don't know what it's going to look like in the coming weeks. We'll see. They could wear down. I don't know. Indiana's got a good defensive front. D-line, I think Van Sumeren's good. I think Jalen Thompson's pretty good. I think Dunnigan's good off the bench at defensive end. Ben Roberts has had some moments. Didn't play last week, was sick. Started Buckley. Buckley's a big dude. Not bad again, at point of attack, double teams, but not a guy that's going to turn and run anything down. So he's limited speed-wise. Put in a good effort. The edge players have just kind of been guys. They've not been dudes. They've been guys. They went out and got 3 or 4 in the portal, and they've just all kind of been guys. They've had some flashes here and there. Santiago had a nice pass rush sack against Nebraska. The kid from Texas Tech, Jones, has just kind of been a guy. He had some really good, I mentioned a bunch of times, he had a real good bowl game twice for Texas Tech. One against, I think, Arkansas, one against Mississippi. But consistently didn't really do it a whole lot at Texas Tech. Michigan State got him, and he's just kind of been a guy. Still has time to be more than that. But like you said, you need a brotherhood where you can trust the man next to you. In terms of people getting out of gaps, there was one play against Nebraska. I can't remember how it got loose. Santiago as an edge, 2nd and 2, got way upfield in a non-pass rush situation, opened up too much daylight. Van Sumeren was the defensive tackle next to him, and he was too gapping, and there was just too much daylight, and it got out. It was the running touchdown, running back like 23 yards down the right sideline. I think that made it 31-21 Nebraska. That's the type of thing when you've got Santiago in your program for the first time, second stringer. They correct that in the film room, but you'd kind of like to have a chance to correct that during like the second scrimmage of the spring during year 2 or year 3 in the program. Instead, he's in year 1 of the program. The best way to make corrections is when something happens on the field and you can show the film and get it corrected that way. Sometimes it takes 2 or 3 times to get it corrected. There's too many times with players that make a mistake like that, maybe for the first time, it costs you games. And that gets back to what I was saying earlier when I was talking to Mark D'Antonio about when you're establishing a defense and you got players that have been in the system for multiple years, not just a year and a half, but players in the program. Michigan State's playing guys that are first-year players starting at both corners and at the edge. But then they've got some veteran guys also that are jumping out of their gap trying to help someone else, or, in my opinion, throttling down the effort. Not everybody, but there are some people doing that, I thought, in the last game. So it's a combination of all those things. Bringing players in and out. The idea was long-term depth, long-term versatility. Has that led to more brain fog and not knowing what to do? Maybe so. They're doing it a lot early in the season when the schedule is softer to get that established, get some playing time, get some corrections on tape. But when they prepared to play USC, they said they were going to shorten the bench on defense, which they did, because they were giving up plays to Youngstown State with second stringers on the field.
Call from
D.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
All right. Well, once again, what is your name, sir?
D.
D. And where are you calling from?
Cadillac.
Are you ready to go on the show?
Sure.
All right, D. Let's go to Cadillac, Michigan. We can bring in D to the show. Michigan State fan. We've not heard from him in the past. But, D, what's on your mind? Welcome to SpartanMag Live.
Hey, I appreciate you taking my call, Jim. I appreciate everything you do. I guess my question is do you sense any distractions outside of, like, the locker room or anything like that? I mean, I've been watching it, and up to the third down conversion at Lincoln, I mean, I think we were all hopeful that Jonathan Smith was the right guy. I still think he could be. It's confusing to me how somebody that's nationally respected, nationally, is just so inept. I mean, you turn on the Tuesday night Sun Belt games, the Maction games, and you turn on that and you're watching discipline, passion football, and I don't see it right now. And I just feel like there's something missing.
D, I think you're exactly right. And I think you speak for a lot of fans. It's one thing to lose games, but if you lose games with a brand of football that's, respectable and, accountable, fans can see that. But when you see loose screws all over the place, and then what's perceived as, kind of casualness in terms of problem solving, whether that's true or not true, perception might be wrong on that. But add that all together, and fans, it's a little foreign to them. They've seen losing, but they've not seen like this flavor of it. So, no, you're right. It's hard to put a finger on it. There's no question his resume was excellent. There's no question he built a winner at Oregon State, and it's not easy to do that. So he must have had something going on really strongly there. And throughout the 2023 season, when Michigan State had the job opening, and we wrote our hot board coach candidates weekly, sometimes 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week, about some of the candidates. I was watching Oregon State all year. Had a real nice moment. They blew out Chip Kelly and UCLA, and they did a good job at Utah. They held tough against Washington, very good Washington team that ended up in the national title game. Did not do so well with some decisions with a loss at Arizona. Lost to Washington State in a game where it was ugly because it was like 41-35, but the defense was not good either way. And the one thing I said about Oregon State and Washington State is I didn't like their defenses. And Jonathan Smith did not bring his defense coordinator with him. Washington State, with their coach Dickert, was in the hot board, on my personal hot board. I never detected that Michigan State was interested in him. But the thing I didn't like about him was the defense at Washington State. It was just too loosey-goosey, He ends up, he's head coach at Wake Forest now, doing a decent job. But I as much as I try to pay attention to Oregon State, I really don't know what happened the year before. They were 10-3 and were even better, deeper in the top 20. I don't know what happened in year 2 and year 3 as they were getting it secured and getting it built. I don't know if they were having these loose screw moments back then in year 2 and year 3. I suspect they did, but I didn't watch those games closely, so I don't really know.
I think the majority of us had like Lance Leipold, Smith, and Elko as our top 3 in any order. And And I felt like, when they made the hire to Jonathan Smith, they were bringing in a developer. I mean, I saw the vision, that he was going to recruit, maybe not at a top end, but he was going to get a top 30 class. They were going to develop. And, again, up until the Lincoln, the third down, I look back where Eaton bit and they get that after Raiola's helmet comes off, yada, yada, no excuses. I mean, since that point, it just seems very loose. And even beforehand, there's some points you look back and it's just like, they're not fundamental. There's no accountability, I guess is the point I'm trying to make. And I just, if you have the same thing, I mean, I listen to your videos, I listen to the press conference. I'm a sicko again when it comes to Michigan State football. You're watching this and you're getting the same answers, like, it's execution, it's one-on-ones, we're so close, all of these things. And again, he's a nationally recognizable coach that had a lot of positive vibes going on, and just to be so inept in execution. I don't think it's a talent issue. You brought that up. I don't think it is. And I just hope, and I've been bouncing back and forth all week, whether they make the move or they stay with Smith. And I mean, I'd actually lean towards staying with Smith. I think he's a good coach, but there has to be something going on. And if there is something going on, maybe they do need to make a move. But I wonder if there has to be some other element, because I think there is more talent. And you mentioned it. They had just as much talent as Nebraska, UCLA, USC. They were out. But other than that, I mean, they could easily be in those other two games and win, and it's just ugly. But I'll hang up and listen. Thanks, Jim, again.
All right,
you're doing great work.
All right, thanks, D. That's D in Cadillac. There's a lot there as to what's gone wrong. We talked about it earlier. Among other things, the quarterback has kind of flatlined a little bit, not come along like they needed him to, and part of that's because the offensive line and the run game have not been there. Now, what happened at Oregon State that was better? It took them a while. I don't know how long it took them, but that run game at Oregon State was really gangbusters in second to last year, and then his last year pretty good also. They were a change-up in the Pac-12. Two tight ends, outside zone, inside zone. They were physical for the Pac-12. They were different. Not many teams were playing that style. So they kind of were the knuckleball out there, which might have enhanced their effectiveness out there. And at face value, I thought that, well, that's a good match for the Big Ten because you got to play that way. A lot of teams play that way out here. That's a good way to play. They come here to the Big Ten, and a lot of teams play that way, so it's not a knuckleball. Harbaugh played that way. Iowa's played that way for years. You can say what you want about Iowa's offense, but a few years back, it was pretty tough the way that they could run the ball at you and counter boot out of it, a lot of the stuff that they do. Wisconsin, when they were pretty good, even these days, I mean, Ohio State, less of that. Penn State loaded up and run it at you. Rutgers, for sure, loaded up and run it at you. Maryland tries to do both. Not so much Indiana or Purdue. But Minnesota, two tight ends, zone, physical. So Michigan State presenting that, it's not a knuckleball. These teams know how to play against that. Did that have a hand in the rash of tackles for loss last year? Does that have a hand in Michigan State not being able to establish the run like they wanted to early on? Maybe. And this year, like last year, injuries on the offensive line have not helped. Running back talent room is okay. It's not, Michigan State, we've seen really good running backs over the years, right? I love Frazier and what he tries to do, but it's not a Michigan State standard tailback room. Could it have helped to have gotten someone else? And nothing against Frazier. He's given good effort, but all those things put together, and if you're making mistakes, it's enough to get you beat. Losing is no big deal, but if you're losing when you're correct and physical, again, people can identify that and appreciate that. When you lose with loose screws, I always use that term. Then some people are less. They're ready to bail. And for other reasons also. Question 12, Shafee in Grand Ledge says, how does Smith right the ship this offseason? So Shafee is he's on board with keeping him and going for a third year, and that's a nice, constructive, noble thing. How do you right the ship? It's going to be really hard because the fans of, the idea that so many people want to move on. Recruiting is going to be impossible. So recruiting is going to be You have to super evaluate the plan C's because that's what you're going to get. Now, in NIL, with money, you can still, bring in guys with a payment, but how much of those guys, if they're coming in for a payment, are they really, going to be connected to the program long term? You're getting tough situations. Portal, a lot of times in the portal, you have a mixture of 1-year guys and 2-year guys and 3-year guys. They're developmental guys. So the 1-year guys, they're mercenaries anyway, coming in for a payment to try to better themselves for the draft, which can work. I think Omari Kelly's in that category. I think Krishan McCray's got 2 years, though. Connor Moore's got 2 years. So it's still going to be portal for next year. And how do you right the ship? Another year defensive know-how. Are there changes on the staff? I don't know. If the ice is this thin and you get to come back for another year, do you change some things up? Other programs around the country have. So I'm not sure. But you're asking, how does he right the ship? Man, that'd be a long list if they get to that level. Question 2 from Shafee from Grand Ledge says, I watched a lot of Oregon State's 2023 games, and Smith's offense looked very different than what we've seen at Michigan State. Does he just feel he doesn't have the right players? Good question. 2023, like I said a minute ago, it's the play concepts are very similar. It's still Brian Lindgren's offense. It's still a lot of under center, some I formation, maybe a little more I formation here than they had there. 2 tight ends, inside zone, outside zone. Establish the run, play action deep. You're not seeing as many deep shots as they did back then, but it was more successful at Oregon State because they established the run. Once you get that run established, then the safeties have to creep up. Then you go behind them. One leads to another. If you don't have that run game established, the rest of it doesn't build off each other. So, same concepts, but you're right. It doesn't look like it did at Oregon State because they don't have the run game going. Same concepts, though. Question 13, Tampa Spartan says, Jim, is J-Bat's newness a factor in any timing regarding a coaching change? In other words, he's probably still in a learning curve with Michigan State. Does he know enough yet to make a proper decision, understanding all implications and the stakeholders? Or would a conceptual plan for replacing a major coach have been discussed when he interviewed with Guskowitz? When he interviewed with Guskowitz, that's a good point. I'm sure they probably brought up some hypotheticals, being if you had to hire a new coach in any major sport, what are you looking for? How do you do it? I'm sure that probably came up. Learning curve, I'm sure that J-Bat did not want to have to make these type of decisions in year one. I think he would have loved to have had some success with the current staff and the current coaching staff with football so that he could concentrate on other things, fundraising, handling Michigan State's economic puzzles in the athletic department, focus on those things. I'm sure he would have rather have done that rather than be slapped with this situation 6 games in. And again, 3-3 is not a bad record. The problem is how those 3 losses have come, and what a lot of people are right in thinking that if things don't change, there's going to be a lot more losses. But yeah, the newness factor is not ideal. I'm sure he would have liked to have learned more about the lay of the land, the climate, all those things. I don't mean the weather climate, just the landscape of Michigan State and how people think and operate and the donors and all those things. I'm sure that he would have rather not had to keep his ear to the ground in football. He'd want to support football. And I mean, he wants to work with the fans and what their game experience is and find out, what people are upset about the loudness of the loudspeakers. What can we do about that? Problems with the lines at the concession stands. What can we do about that? Chair back seats. How's that going? How's the stadium looking? Fundraising, other things. You don't want to have to be doing this. Question 14, Tino from Long Beach. If Jonathan Smith beats Michigan, does that buy him some time or is he done regardless? Good question. If he's around and they beat Michigan, hell yes, that would buy him time, because that would get him to 4-4. Then you're 2 wins away from a bowl game, and you've done. If you beat Michigan, I know Michigan is struggling, but if you beat Michigan, you will have played a good game and tightened up some screws and established that you have made a rebound. And if you can beat Michigan, you can get another 2 wins. Be tough, but you have to win at Minnesota and beat Maryland and Detroit. Get to 6-6 in a bowl game with a win over Michigan. Yeah, that would. I think that'd get them another year. If they can get to that. Question 15, Orca from the Arctic Ocean. Orca from the Arctic Ocean. He says, how much money gets reinvested into the football program from the TV contracts? Where does it go within the football program? It seems to me, he says, there's plenty of money there for coaching salaries, buyouts, and facility upgrades. Good question. In other words, he's saying if we got to cut bait, we got enough money. It shouldn't be no problem. Possibly true. But I mean, we've been hearing that Michigan State's athletic department's been running at a severe deficit the last 2 or 3 years, partly because less money during COVID, which everybody had to deal with, partly because they had to fire Mel Tucker and that the big contract, which is still being deliberated. But I think when Michigan State, bookkeeping wise, puts that in as a loss for now, I think, plus his assistant coaches, Susie Merchant moving on, was a negative in the balance sheet as well. But you're right, all that money coming in from TV contracts, where does it go? That's a good question. A lot of money is being spent. It's not like they're paying the field hockey coach $10 million. But they are paying Mel Tucker. That money's being held up, and they are paying him a lot. They're paying Jonathan Smith a lot. Some of the assistant coaches quite a bit. But you're right, there's a lot of money there. It shouldn't be, it doesn't seem like there should be this much financial strain, but there is financial strain. I don't have an answer for you in terms of the entire budget and where everything goes. I know Michigan State's overall budget for athletic department was like $163 million in 2024. That seems like a lot of money. But all these Big Ten teams have a lot of money, and they're all in financial thin ice. So I don't know. You raise a great question. Question 16. I don't know who posted this, but he says I didn't write down who posted it. I'm sorry. He says, any recruiting rumors for college basketball for Michigan State? Yeah, Ethan Taylor, the 7-footer, 230 pounds, Link Academy. Oh, this is Mike from DeWitt asks this question. Ethan Taylor, Link Academy, that's in Missouri, number 25 player in the country, number 2 center in the country, 7 feet, 230, moves well at 7 feet. Got some strength to him. He's thin. He's a young guy who's 7 feet, but he's not a string bean. He's got good footwork, plays with some power, big-time center. In terms of a 7-footer, Michigan State's recruited some 7-footers over the years. Jaren Jackson came here and kept growing and became a 7-footer, I think. But in terms of post skill and just footwork and body control, I got to watch some more of him. I've watched a good bit, but I need to watch more. But I don't think Michigan State's ever had a 7-foot teenager, if they get him, like this. And he visited Oregon September 5th, Oklahoma September 12th, Indiana September 19th, Kansas September 26th. Visited Michigan State recently. Loved his Michigan State visit. Indiana and Michigan State perceived as the leaders. He can face up, do some spin dribble, post quickness, body control, has some power. Really good, really quick. Wiry, strong with a drop step to either shoulder from either block. Needs to learn how to finish with the left hand when going to his right shoulder. That'll probably come at some point. But big timer. And a guy that I don't think would... in years past, I don't know if Michigan State would get involved with someone like this because he'd go to Kansas or someplace. An NIL, the legal NIL era, to put it one way. This is a big-time player. And more programs are doing more transfer portal recruiting, right? So high school recruiting is de-emphasized with some programs. Plus, Michigan State can now pay. So Michigan State's in on a big timer there, and I think Michigan State's in pretty good shape. Josiah Juris is another one out of the Bronx, New York, 6'5", Archbishop Stepanak. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Number 39 player in the country, visited Michigan State September 5 during Grind Week. Official visits, Pittsburgh, NC State. There's some others in there. I think State's in solid shape there. I think they're in better shape with Taylor, trying to finish on some of these guys. Tristan Reed is another guy that just announced yesterday that Michigan State's in his top 5, along with Maryland, Mississippi State, Missouri, and Ohio State. 6'9", ranked number 80 in the country. Not as tall as Taylor, not ranked as high. He's got some strength. He's the brother of Terrace Reed, whom Michigan State recruited hard out of high school, ended up at Michigan, did some good things there. Now he's at Connecticut. Hey, this is one thing about Izzo. When he recruits Terrace Reed and loses, Izzo's not one to burn bridges. For some reason, he just always wants to get the wants to get the appreciation. What's the word I'm looking for? He wants to get the approval. Even if he loses on a recruit, he seeks the approval of that recruit for the rest of his life because he doesn't want to be fake. Like, I recruited you real hard in high school. You didn't pick me. Oh, screw you. I don't care about you anymore. Some coaches are like that. Izzo's not like that. You pick somewhere else. Hey, man, I hate that, man. I hate to lose you. Good luck to you. Stay in touch. I still love you, whatever. That's the way Izzo is. And he was that way with Terrace Reed. Reed went in the portal. I don't know what happened there with Michigan State. I thought Michigan State was going to have a shot at him. Goes to Connecticut. But that form of Tom Izzo, it's not a surprise to me that Izzo's in real good shape for Tristan Reed. Now, if State gets Taylor, do they also have room for Reed? Would they bring in 2 centers? And these guys are centers. Can one of them become a power forward at some point? Maybe. But Michigan State, Izzo, they've recruited a 2-center class in the past. Just recently, Carson Cooper and Jackson Kohler. And now Kohler has become more of a 4, and you can play those guys together. But for a couple of years, it was one or the other. Going all the way back to Suton and Ebach, they brought them in the same class. Ebach never really materialized, and Suton became a 4. But initially, it's 2 centers. And, Nick Ward and Xavier Tillman were different seasons. But he's done it before, and I'm trying to find out whether there's room for both, and I'll try to ask around to find out a little bit more. But it seems to me that Michigan State has room for both centers. Does that make for a 5-man class? Because they've already got 2 commitments, including Medlock, the point guard, and Avent, the kind of a stretch 4. Jervis would be a 2. Then you bring in a couple of 5s. 5-man recruiting class. In this day and age, that's kind of rare. But if you recruit a big recruiting class in these days, you're kind of expecting 1 or 2 of them to be like Trey Roberson and Trey Holloman and move on. You don't want that to happen, but Izzo still wants to recruit his kind of guys and develop some long-term guys and sprinkle in some portal. But recruiting this year for Michigan State basketball, really interesting. I think we've got, looks like we've got another Super Chat. Let's go to the Super Chat board. We've got Russ Hawk. Russ Hawk. How about Russ Hawk, ladies and gentlemen? $9.99 from Russ Hawk. He says if Michigan State could be Iowa in terms of stability, limited movement of players in portal, just mainly recruiting Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, would you take that deal? Basically, I missed Antonio, is what he's saying. That would not be enough, Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana. Michigan State, in their best years, has recruited Michigan pretty well, has never been able to dominate Detroit. And there are good players in there, and there are some players that are duds that come out of Detroit, and there are some players that come out of Detroit that are underrated. Sauce Gardner, there's a bunch of them like that. Evaluation, player development is so important in that city. And there are some overrated players for political reasons. Got to stay clear of those. Got to get your OKGs. But City Detroit's always had pretty good players, even better now. I mean, they've done a good job. The Sound Mind, Sound Body organization. Good job with the summer development, the 7-on-7s. I'd have to talk to some of the people with that, but I think they're involved in like after-school tutoring and things like that. I mean, it's a real deal. And there's always been good athletes coming out of Detroit, and football is important down there. School of choice has changed football in Detroit also. It used to be, back in the 80s, there's a lot of talent, but they were dispersed among other teams. Osborne would have a player, McKenzie would have a player. I don't know. Southwestern would have a player, Pershing would have a player, Henry Ford would have a player. They're kind of scattered, and, some of those teams didn't do well in playoffs. I'm not really sure about player development, but some of those guys have become good. Detroit King, you had plenty of players coming out of Detroit back then. Now, school of choice, a lot of the top players are going to 2 programs, Cass Tech and King. And I think that, it's not been great for the entire top to bottom public school league in terms of, it's a big 2 and it's hard for the others to get going, and some of those programs are struggling. But in terms of player development, I think school of choice has probably helped because I think there's been a better concentration of coaches at Cass Tech and King. I'm not there all the time, so I don't really know, but that's my perception. And the result has been, I think there's some good players, but there's some good players coming out of other ones in the extended areas of Detroit. Players that go to River Rouge, like Nick Marsh has done a great job. And other ones, the Southfield schools and into the suburbs. So the state of Michigan still has a good number of players in the NFL per capita. And I mentioned this before that I don't know about this fall, but last fall there were more players, maybe the fall before that, there were more players from the city of Detroit in the NFL opening day roster. More players from the city of Detroit on NFL opening day rosters than any other city in the country. Detroit. More opening day roster kids from Detroit in the NFL 2 years ago than Dallas, Atlanta, Miami, Los Angeles. I don't mean per capita. I mean more. Jonathan Smith mentioned that when he took the job. He was really stunned by that. And you look at some of those players, and some of those guys are coming from Ferris State. Some of those guys went to Kentucky, went to Penn State, went to Toledo, went to Central Michigan. So it's not always the highly ranked guys. Went to Cincinnati. So there's players there. Evaluation is so important. You're asking me if Michigan State could beat Iowa in terms of stability. That would be nice. Limited movement of players in the portal. That would be nice. If you get people buying into the program, liking everything, which is what Jonathan Smith's trying to do. Get people liking the program, liking each other where they don't want to leave. But you need NIL to keep them. That's got to be part of it. So that's sounds easy. But yeah, Michigan State would like to do that. But I just think recruiting is important. It's not the thing that it used to be a few years ago because now the portal enters into it. But in terms of recruiting, yeah, you got to hit Detroit. You got to do well in Michigan. Evaluation. Ohio. Tucker didn't recruit Ohio. Ohio's not as strong as it used to be, but there's still players there for sure. Got to be strong in Ohio. You're not going to out-recruit Ohio State in the state of Ohio. But if you can be number 2 in the state of Ohio, whoever is recruiting number 2 in the state of Ohio has always been a top 20 program. And for a while, that was Michigan State. There have been other programs that have taken their turns of that, including maybe arguably Cincinnati a couple of years ago when Fickle was there. I remember when Boston College recruited really well when O'Brien was there. And they had top 15 teams, and they were the number 2 recruiting team in Ohio behind the Buckeyes. Really hit the Catholic League hard in Cincinnati. In recent years, Kentucky, a big part of their secret sauce was they became the number 2 recruiter in Ohio. And Kentucky rose in their program success rate. There's been years when West Virginia in previous decades has been good in Ohio. Michigan State, like I said. And I throw Michigan in there too. I mean, back in the Big 2 and Little 8, Schembechler, there's no question Michigan was number 1 or number 2 recruiting Ohio kids. I mean, like post Schembechler, Michigan recruits in Ohio here and there. They've kind of turned their back on it. They go back in, then they stop. If Michigan is serious about recruiting in Ohio, it's really hard to be number 1 or number 2. But if Michigan's going national a little bit more, then whoever is number 2 or number 3, depending on how busy Michigan is in there, can really do some damage. Indiana, that one of their linebackers is the Jones kid. He's a 3-star Ohio kid, ranked number 25 in the state. He can play football, inside linebacker, solid. Those guys. Indiana gets a guy. That's a border state. I've always said there's no reason why Indiana shouldn't recruit better in Ohio, but they're doing it now, here and there. So, yeah, you're right, Ohio. I mean, all those things. I mean, everybody knows what it is. You get in the DMV. D'Antonio used to do that. He used to recruit a little bit in that Virginia area. Plaxico Burress, Felton Davis, been some others. You don't need like a whole long list of them, just 1 or 2 there. 1 or 2 if you can hit Pennsylvania, New Jersey if you can. Texas, everyone recruits Texas, right? Georgia, everybody recruits Georgia, obviously. Michigan State's had some success there. And they've got some interesting connections down there. Former players. Curtis Daniels, an important one. Some people that have got some connections that if you plugged into that efficiently and effectively, you can do some damage there. And I'm not sure Michigan State's done enough there, but the potential's there. Vickerson over there in Texas, he's becoming really involved with recruiting because he's got a son who's 4-star recruit, and he's involved with player development with young people there. And he had a really good NFL career, and he's in real great shape in a lot of ways. He just loves football. Got to plug in with Vickerson in the Houston area. Between Curtis Daniel and Vickerson, you can really, Michigan State's is positioned, they can do some damage there. I'm not talking about bringing 10 guys in, but 1 or 2 or 3 here, 1 or 2 or 3 per year, and that's a big part of a recruiting class. Ohio, Michigan, a little bit DMV if you can. Chicagoland, you always got to keep your ear to the ground there. Chicagoland produces D linemen, always has. And the Georgia thing and the Texas thing is new. And Michigan State's got some potential there. So that needs to be done. I think it's pretty important. Brian Bowes. We got another super chat here from Brian Bowes. Thank you, Brian Bowes. In the tip jar. We appreciate that. Brian Bowes says, I don't see a world where Smith fires Lindgren. They agree on how they want an offense to be run. Two places I would look if Smith gets a third year is to replace Rossi as well as general manager Cole Moore. I don't know, you're entitled to that opinion. I don't know enough about behind the scenes about grading general managerial moves, especially when you're limited, when you don't really know what your NIL was a year and a half ago and so forth. Rossi, I loved Rossi when he was at Minnesota, but you raise a good point. There have been some good coordinators in college football over the years that have parted ways with head coaches for lesser reasons. So I can't say, I'm not going to say that either one of those is the right thing to do, but I appreciate your opinion and your comment in the tip jar, which enabled you to get your question read here. And once again, we're going to probably have to shut it down. We've been going for quite a while, but we certainly appreciate the contributions to the chip jar over there with the, what do you call it? The super chat. Appreciate that. Getting a lot of interaction there and activity there, and we appreciate you guys. All right, question 17 from Joe Ski Sparty in West Bloomfield. He says, does this offense look close to anything we were expecting? Like I said earlier, no. Offensive line is not quite established the run like they did at Oregon State. So the run game doesn't look like we thought it could or would or should. Did we think that it would totally get established midway through year 2 when Smith was hired? I was curious to find out, but I'm not surprised. We shouldn't be surprised that it's not working, the offensive line, yet, because I doubt that it was really humming in year 2 at Oregon State. Are we too knee-jerk and not patient enough? Maybe. They have had injuries on the offensive line, but does the offense look like we were expecting? No, because the run game, first of all, is not getting it done. Offensive line injuries, they are not really pounding people like they did at Oregon State when they were running well. Jack Velling's not been what he was expected to be. And Jack's his own harshest critic, and he wants to work at it. The blocking's coming around, but it's not a strength. He made some good plays in the Nebraska game, looked pretty good there. Alessio Milivojevic hooked up with him nicely a few times. He's got some hands. He shows that here and there. But, he was, as a sophomore, he was second team all Pac-12. I think he set a school record with 5 touchdowns at Oregon State. So you'd expect more of that to translate. It just hasn't. I mean, he is what he is. It's not his fault, not anyone's fault, but the tight end position's not been the plus that I maybe would have thought it would have been 2 years ago. Aiden Childs has not quite hit that next level. He looked like he was on the cusp of that, bringing Michigan State back on his shoulders in that Boston College game. USC had some moments. Nebraska, a lot of things were going against him. That was very difficult. To his credit, he did a lot with his feet and legs in that game because the pass game was going a little bit awry. You can't question his heart, and it was his heart that got him hurt last week against UCLA. Michigan State was down 24-7, whatever it was, late in the first half, and scrambles. I can't remember if it was a zone read keeper. I think it might have been a zone read keeper, and he's got a gain of 5 or 6, and instead of just letting himself get tackled 5 or 6, he turned back into the fray, back into the pursuing players, and got leveled by a 310-pounder because he's trying to do more. He's trying to help the team. Heart, determination, and he got himself hurt doing that. So, part of what they're talking about this week is don't try to do too much. You appreciate the heart in that situation there, trying to make a play, but there's times when quarterbacks need to slide or get out of bounds, and you never want to turn back into the traffic. And got lit up pretty hard, but it's because he was trying so hard. Question 18 from Matt in Glen Ellen, Illinois. Matt says, what are a few things that will surprise us about the basketball team this year? A few things. I think Cohen Carr is going to become more and more of a bucket getter, not just a dunker. I'm curious to see if pull up 10-footer, pull up 15-footer with his ability to elevate. He's got a nice shot release. That's like an almost unstoppable shot, the way he can elevate. You got to be worried about him dry. He handles the ball real well, handles with power. As defenders, they got to be worried about him going all the way to the cup for the dunk. So if you pull up And with the way he can jump, it's just so hard to get a hand on that. If that medium range shot comes around, you'll be hearing me say that all year. I've seen him do it a little bit in practice, saw him a little bit in the summer. Is that what he's really worked on? We will find out. But he's going to be a bucket getter, just going to the rim, going to the rack, not only for dunks, but just knifing his way with power to the rim, layups and so forth, pull-ups. I think his game is kind of becoming like a Larry Johnson game. I know Larry Johnson was like the first ever $100 million guy in the NBA. I'm not going to say he can play like Grandmama right away, but I think he's got that kind of potential, and he keeps getting better. He's a good kid, and he works at it. His shot was ugly when he came to Michigan State. Shot looks good. It looks better now. Three-pointer doesn't look terrible. And his shot became good, and you saw it at the free throw line. We saw transformation at the free throw line, and that has carried over to other aspects. The off-the-dribble pull-up game could be devastating for him. Cam Ward, the freshman, I think he's a young bucket getter. He's a winner. He just gets buckets. Now, his role, he might only be a 16-minute-a-game guy coming off the bench as a 4, but he's just going to be a guy that I think is going to accumulate points here and there. Other stuff, we'll have to wait and see what Jeremy Fears can be, whether he can add layers to his game. I'll be watching some practice to check in on that later. Question 19. Don't know who posted this. I apologize. He says, any chance Smith brings in his former Oregon State defensive coordinator now that he is available? That's Trent Bray, who was fired as head coach at Oregon State this week. That thought has crossed my mind, but Smith didn't bring him with him when he got the job. Did Bray, was Bray invited? I don't know. Or did they say, hey, man, you hang out, and if you can get the job, go ahead and stay? Because that's what D'Antonio did with Narduzzi. When D'Antonio left Cincinnati, Narduzzi did not come initially. Narduzzi interviewed for the job and did not get the job. Then he came a few days later. So I'm not sure how that all shook out. It's crossed my mind, but I don't know enough about it. But, back when Smith had it going on at Oregon State, their defenses were not that good. So I don't know. Question 20. This is from Crozet from Virginia. Oh, no, he's posting from Crozet in Virginia. I forget what his name is, though. I apologize. He says, Comp, curious if you've had time to understand what this private equity deal would mean for Michigan State. Do you think this deal getting over the goal line will impact the decision J-Bat has for Jonathan Smith? Interesting question. No, but you can't let the private equity decision have a hand on this. But it sounds like it's going to happen. I know that Michigan has been pausing and balking about it. So is Ohio State. So is USC. But it sounds like it's going to happen. That private equity deal is going to come in and get 10% of the take, and they're going to push collective revenue generation and so forth. And each Big Ten school is going to get a huge check annually from this. And the universities have no say about television as it is, and they'll have even less say now, and they may have less say about, I don't know, their uniforms, their signage at the stadiums. I'm not sure what else they're going to lose. But I suspect it's going to go through, and I suspect Michigan State can think that they're going to have more money in the future. Maybe that's in the back of the mind about we can do this. It helps with the buyout because of that. I don't know. Good question. I'm not sure. Interesting question. Matt in Mountain Town says, I don't know what Mountain Town is. Does he mean Denver? Not sure. Matt says, are you hearing something similar to what Graham Couch said, that next week could be it for Jonathan Smith? Graham Couch mentioned on his podcast that could be done after the Oregon game. I don't think Graham was citing sources on that. I think he's just making a read on the situation. So I'm not sure he reported that. I talked to Graham today, and we talked about some things. I listened to that podcast. I think Graham was just kind of like reading the weather, kind of the climate, and said that he thinks that could happen. I don't think he's citing sources, inside sources that say that's going to be the case. I don't think that's the case. So am I hearing that? I'm not sure Graham heard that. I'm not hearing that. I'm hearing that donors are grumbling, but that doesn't mean everything. Question 22, Pat from Rochester Hills. Comp, what percentage would you put on Smith coming back next year? With NIL, Michigan State stepped away from the collectives. Does that mean Bat's approach is to use revenue sharing and approved NIL through the clearinghouse only? Is there anything else they're doing we have not heard about? Since Bat has been hired, is NIL in better or worse shape? That's Pat from Rochester Hills. What percentage on Smith coming back? For reasons I said earlier, I'm not going to get into that. NIL, right now it's my understanding that, Michigan State, like everybody else, has $20.5 million because of the House settlement, and Michigan State is only paying that $20.5 million. I'm not only, they do have some room for third party, and they are seeking commercial opportunities for players. How aggressive that is, what kind of program that is, it's not quite what Ohio State is doing now. Ohio State is operating in a million-person metropolis, and they are, Buckeye nationalism is so strong in Columbus. It's apples and oranges there. Other programs are doing third party, and I think it was Bjork, the athletic director at Ohio State, says that the difference maker for athletic departments going forward is which programs are going to do well third party above and beyond that $20.5 million. Bjork was with Bat and other athletic directors on that, whatever you call it, focus group or whatever, the group that put together the NIL Go guardrails. And they're steadfast. Those athletic directors set the rules, and they are following those rules. I suspect Ohio State is also. There's other athletic departments that are not following the rules, I'm just saying. And Ohio State's following the rules, but they're also aggressive above and beyond the 20.5. I would think Michigan State needs to be strong above and beyond the 20.5 also. Are there indications that Michigan State is strong and aggressive above that 20.5? I've not seen it. If I talk to Jay Batter, he sees me, he can fill me in on that, but I'm not sure. But as of right now, your point is Michigan State, now that they've stepped away from collectives, and they have stepped away from collectives, they aren't really embracing any of those, and some have gone away, and some are still out there, but and still doing contracts with players. You may have seen that This Is Sparta podcast last night. Tom Dieters was on with Strayhorn and Irvin and talking about things, and they've got contracts with players, student athletes from other universities, and a few still at Michigan State, but not officially embraced by Michigan State Athletic Department. And Tom, you can watch that podcast and see what Tom said about that. So, Jay Back can inform me on what the plan is. I know they want to try to foster relationships with some commercial name, image, and likeness deals, like real commercial opportunities, like what the rule is supposed to be that would pass the clearinghouse. And the clearinghouse, I've heard, is a really thick stickler on these things, and it takes weeks and weeks and weeks for approval. I'm hearing that people in athletic departments nationwide are really I think it's run by Deloitte, the clearinghouse NIL Go. It takes a long time to get things cleared, and a lot of times they send back for fine tuning over and over. They're being a real headache for universities, and I think that's what they wanted them to be. I think they think they're doing their job. A lot of these things are fluid, and they seem like they're changing all the time. But that's where Michigan State is right now. Is NIL in better or worse shape? He asks. I'm not seeing that it's better. If it is, J-Bat can talk to me about that and point it out where it is and so forth, but I've not really seen it. So I don't know. Question 23, Vic from Stevensville, Michigan, childhood home of David Stockman, he says, which was Reagan's budget director. He just kind of threw that in there. We don't do politics here, but he put it in there. Maybe I shouldn't have read that. Anyway, not that I care one way or another. We come here to get away from that, right? The real world. This is sports. We care about it, and it taps into our tribal wiring, but it's just sports. All right. Vic from Stevensville says, you've been around our head coaches for years, so I'm curious about your impressions of Coach Jonathan Smith on a personal level. Not the X's and O's. A lot is being made of his sideline demeanor, but I'm curious about your firsthand observations. That's from Vic in Stevensville. And that'll be our last question of the day. My observations as a person, a lot of people are saying this, is a real kind person, nice person, and has had great patience with some tough questions from the media. I've seen coaches in these situations that have had less patience and a little bit more combative. I think he's a genuinely good person. He's less emotional. He's more clinical, and he's just handling practice. He's handling tomorrow's practice, and he's just handling his job. And I'm not sensing a lot of panic there. He's urgent. He wants to get things fixed. He's competitive. He doesn't want this season to go down the drain and for his tenure to come to end unsuccessfully. He doesn't want that for the program, the players. I think he's enjoyed Michigan State. I think they've turned on him a little bit, which could sour anybody, but he's just sticking to the task. He says a lot is being made of his sideline demeanor, but I'm curious about your firsthand observations. The sideline demeanor, like I said before, these head coaching jobs in college football, they are political jobs. You have to be a politician. You have to have your constituents to be confident that you're doing your job. If you're a politician, you got to go out and shake hands, kiss babies, all those things. And we're going to work on this. We got this. In football, when things are going wrong, you need to see your coach is on it. Like what the hell's going on out there? The old Vince Lombardi thing. Maybe not that, but I mean, he was a little more animated at Oregon State. By and large, his demeanor is more of a John Wooden than it is Bobby Knight. No question about that. John Wooden won a good bit of games with superior talent. You can win that way. Tom Landry was kind of that way. It can be done. But if you're going to be that way, your teams need to be buttoned up and not beating yourself and not regressing the way Michigan State is. And I've just heard it from a lot of fans, family members. Why doesn't Jonathan Smith do much coaching on the sideline? He is coaching, but to the layperson, doesn't look like it. So should you fake it and be something that you're not? When he was coordinator for Washington, some coaches don't like a lot of chatter on the headphones. And when he was coordinator for Washington, he was doing all the talking and doing all the plays, and he may not have wanted a lot of stuff on the airwaves. So now that he's not the coordinator, he just wants them doing it. I don't know. But the optics when you're losing, not only losing, but losing with some I don't want to say accountability issues, just quality control issues. The combination of those two can be disconcerting for fans, and I've heard it from fans. They're like, "What?" They want to know why is he? It looks like he's not coaching, and I don't really have an answer for them, but we'll see. I think that has shortened his leash a little bit for some fans. I hate to say it, and it might not be fair, but like I said earlier, fair is where they give a pig to a blue ribbon, or a blue ribbon to a pig, as Rick Neuheisel says. But Smith's a good dude. I think he's treated a lot of people around here real nicely. I don't think dealing with donors and so forth comes natural to him. But all right, let's go out to
Call from. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, we're going to go to Tom in East Lansing. Tom, is this you? You want to join the show? You didn't say your name. You there, Tom?
Hello, this is Tom.
Yeah, Tom.
Tom.
Jim Comparoni, you are on the air. You calling the show? Did you mean to call the show, or are you just calling me just to say hi?
Yeah, no. Just calling. Yeah, that too. Always want to say hi to you.
Tom, happy Thursday morning. It is past midnight. You should be in bed right now, young man.
I know. I'm on my way. You're the last. You're the last call I make tonight. So
all right.
I just had a couple of questions, and I wanted to say hi too.
All right.
So, I'm not in the Fire Smith campaign boat yet. I like Smith, and I think he deserves 3 years. But I had a question. Do you think, for question one, that he's bothered at all by all this talk on the rumbling? Do you think that upsets him at all?
It's got to, I would think. You have to be aware of it. Now, I understand he's focused and he's working, and he says he doesn't read a lot in the media, which I understand, but he's got to be aware of it. People report to him on what's going on. He had to hear the boos at halftime, and it didn't seem, when Perlis would get booed, you could see it kind of rankled him. Smith just kind of stays on task the way he stays on task, which is different than a lot of other people, but I'm sure it's bothering him. I'm sure he's disappointed. I'm sure he wishes the defense was better. I'm sure he wishes the offensive line was better and healthier, but he's a big boy and he knows it's a big boy sport, but it is sad that just halfway through year 2 that so many people are bailing. I mean, I understand why people are. It's just disappointing.
Yeah, they and I can't. I've been around too long to be that upset. I know we got to give him some time. The other question I have is on Childs, who has not been performing the way we wanted him to.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering if if they sit him for a week,
Yeah.
if they put Alessio in, just for the hell of it, is that going to inspire him, or deflate him?
Man, that's a great question.
It go both ways. What do you think about
It's a
that?
great question. And Aiden Childs is a good kid, and he's been supportive of Alessio. Those guys have worked together. They share ideas in the quarterback room. And you saw that when Alessio had some interceptions on his first two passes, Aiden was supporting him.
Yeah.
And when Alessio had some success in the first half against Nebraska, Childs was very supportive of him and was happy for him, and that was genuine. And then Alessio comes in this game against UCLA and had a good moment, pretty good drive at the end of the game. Now UCLA, they still had their starters out there. They maybe were not as aggressive, so Alessio was not passing into the defense that Childs was passing into. But would Childs be better sitting? Konendijk made that point in the VCast yesterday that he would like to see Childs just take another week to get healthier.
Yeah, he did.
Now Alessio still looks inexperienced in some ways. I think he's got a good future. I think he can really drive the ball. I think he processes things quickly. And, Indiana their defense is tricky and tough. And then be in that environment, that would be a really hard place to make to have extended playing time. Now Alessio did a good job against Nebraska. Nebraska had a very good pass defense. It was windy that day, so he did well that day. Over the course of time, I suspect interception number 3 would come at some point if he played a lot in this game. But I think we're going to see him in this game. I think we're going to see Alessio Milivojevic, even if Childs is healthy and well and ready to go. I suspect we might see a series with Alessio in the first half. In the first half.
Don't want to deflate him though, too.
No.
To get your first big show at Indiana when they're rolling like they are would be. Don't want to break him right out of the box there. Well, that's really what I want to say. But and I really want to say hi. Yeah, that's been good.
Yeah. Well, since
listen to you,
Tom, since I've got you on the horn, you've been around Michigan State football for a long time. And when you were a child, right. I think you told me once that you used to go to Spartan Stadium to watch the great Leroy Bolden play the pony backfield back in the 1950s. You're talking Biggie Munn era.
Yep.
Pony backfield.
Yep.
You were there, sneaking in.
Yes.
Did you sneak in? Did you sneak into Spartan Stadium?
Yeah. I have. Oh yeah, I did. We found places in the fence when I was like 5th or 6th grade in Macklin Field. Where we could get in.
Yeah.
We used to do it and try not to get caught. Or if you hang around, and look sad, you're a kid, somebody will give you a ticket because somebody didn't show up or something like that. So we could get in. I do have a quick story if you have time about Leroy Bolden.
Yeah.
My dad owned a restaurant here in town, Chicken Delight restaurant, and we had delivery boys. It was out on Clippert across the Frandor, Clippert in Michigan. And we delivered a lot of food, and we hired delivery boys from college students, and we had a guy that was on the football team. It was like 3rd string fullback, and it was on the football team back in the 50s. And so I was a big Leroy Bolden fan. And I asked him, "Wow, what can you tell me about Leroy Bolden?" And he said, "Well, because he was a linebacker in practice, and he said one of his early practices, they put him in there, and Leroy Bolden came right into the line and ran right over him. He said his knees were damn near eye high, darn near eye high, excuse me, when he came running in, and he said Leroy Bolden ran him right over the flat. He said he was a hard hitter.
I love that. Leroy Bolden. Leroy Bolden, there was a picture of him that used to exist in the football building. It's not there anymore, and I wish they'd find it and put it back up. I've seen some highlights here and there. You're talking 1950s. Leroy Bolden, first of all, African-American student when Michigan State was doing that before a lot of other schools were. It's part of their strength. And Bolden, I'm not sure. Oh, we just lost Tom. Tell him to call back. Leroy Bolden, there was a picture of him in the football building that, let's see, call the 616 number. Call the 616 number. And it's a publicity photo, and he's got a football, helmet off, pads, like picture day photo. I wonder if I can find that. Maybe I'll bring it out some other time. And he's cutting, and his body angle, planting that ankle on natural grass, looks like he's defying gravity. He's like at about 45 degrees making a cut. And like, I've never seen a still picture, other than maybe people that jump real high, but it's hard for a still picture to really depict what I assume was his special, uncommon athletic ability. Little running back with a lot of power. And Henry Bulla was defensive line coach at that time at Michigan State. Or no. I think Henry was on the team in the 50s. Won the national title in 1952, had that winning streak, 52, 53. Best team in the country. That's their strength, and how good Michigan State was there in the 1950s with Biggie Munn is why they were invited to the Big Ten, despite Michigan's protests. Michigan did not want Michigan State in the Big Ten because they've always been afraid of Michigan State because they know how pretty the campus is and what the potential is at Michigan State. And Michigan State was, Florida State, Penn State was an independent power when the Big Ten invited them. Florida State was an independent power when they joined the ACC. Michigan State was the independent power when the Big Ten invited them over Michigan's protests. Bolden was a big part of that. The depth they had, the pony backfield, all those things. And Henry Bulla was on that team. And Henry Bulla went on to be an NFL coach, NFL position coach, NFL head coach, defensive coordinator for Detroit Lions in the Barry Sanders era. And I can't remember what he said. I was talking to him about Leroy Bolden, and he said Boldy, as he called him. I think, he said that it was the closest thing to Barry Sanders he had seen other than Barry. Barry was the best. But Bolden was right there, he said. And big-time Michigan State legend, Leroy Bolden for the 1950s. Anyway, it looks like Helderman's not going to be able to call me back. And when we talked about the 1950s and Tom Helderman, I wanted him to get into a little bit more about what game day was like. Was there tailgating? What was the band like? I wanted to get into more of that because he remembers when he was a little kid going to Michigan State games in the 1950s. That's why I changed to the black and white background here. Look at these guys. Look at these guys in the press box. This is actually Forbes Field in Pittsburgh. These are baseball scribes, and we've had this guy before. Look at this dude. Look at that guy right there. He's got his summer attire on. But how about these mustaches on these cats? Look at that guy, all right? Look at that guy. Look at that mustache. Pirates sports writers, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What's that guy eating? That guy's eating some chicken or something. How about it? Pittsburgh. Anyway, that's going to be it. Appreciate everybody chiming in. We appreciate all the chat contributions. What do they call that? The comments? Super chat. Appreciate the super chat. Appreciate everybody. Appreciate all the support for SpartanMag and for listening for a long time. Long podcast tonight, but Michigan State fans have a lot to talk about. We appreciate the people that called in and joined the fun. Go over to SpartanMag.com. We've got Spartan Michigan State basketball media day on Thursday. We'll have coverage of that. Michigan State at Indiana, a big one. Michigan State wants to be competitive. We'll see what happens. We'll see you next time. Thanks to everybody. Take care of everybody. Be good. Be good. We'll see you.